Chapter 197. Is this what you learn from Anima Gus? The problem that had been troubling George and Fred was not a problem for Ivan, who was thinking about the odds that Muggles had come up with when they gambled. In fact, in addition to setting the odds for each match, you can set other odds such as who catches the golden snitch, how many goals the winner has scored, or what the difference is between the two teams.
That's right, why didn't we think of that?
George said happily, patting his head.
We can also get Wood to move you to the chaser position to control the number of goals scored. That should be foolproof.
Ivan rolled his eyes.
Do you really think I'm a god? How many goals can I control?
The opposing keeper was not blind. No matter how accurate he was, he could be stopped. However, it was clear that George and Fred had high hopes for him. After tidying up their secret base, they dragged Ivan to find Wood. Ivan shook his head and said nothing, thinking that Wood would most likely disagree. After all, Gryffindor had been training for this tactic for over a week, and it was unlikely that they would change tactics at the last minute. To Ivan's surprise, Wood agreed after a moment's thought.
That's not so bad. The Slytherins must think you're going to be a beater, and they're going to train you accordingly and catch them off guard.
Wood said to Ivan's surprise.
So we didn't practice our tactics for nothing.
Harry asked gloomily. He had been a target for too many times in the past few days.
The previous training was certainly not wasted. We could have prepared 2 sets of tactics to deal with different situations.
Wood said confidently. Ivan's marvelous batting skills are the best for scoring goals.
Doesn't Fred have to play if I play chaser?
Ivan asked.
What's wrong? You can't play Fred.
Wood asked, turning to look at Fred.
That's right, I haven't been feeling well lately, and I don't think I'll be able to play.
Fred immediately put his hand over his stomach and pretended to be weak, while winking at Ivan to stop him from exposing him.
I think Ivan and Alicia will do just fine.
George chimed in, standing in front of Fred. Fred took the opportunity to turn his back and do something sneaky. When he looked back again, his nose was bleeding.
I think I'll have to go to Madame Pomfrey's for a few days to see if there's any hope for my health.
Fred tried to block his nostrils with 2 fingers, but blood was gushing out of his nose through the cracks. Ivan's mouth twitched. Wood was speechless when he saw this. He didn't know why Fred's nose was bleeding, but he was no fool, and he could see that something was wrong.
Is this the effect of a skiving snack box? It's funny.
Angelina giggled.
How do you know about skiving snack boxes?
Fred was stunned, his nose bleeding.
Weren't you the ones who handed out the flyers?
Angelina pulled a copy out of her pocket and waved it in front of him. Fred turned to look at George in surprise, but George nodded sheepishly, indicating that he had been the one to hand out the leaflets. Fred swallowed and looked at Wood's darkening face, thinking he was going to die.
Captain Wood, Fred does have other things on his mind these days, and he won't be in the mood for training if you keep him.
Captain, Angelina and I don't want to be replaced, so we'd better let Fred go.
Alicia said helpfully. The rest of the team also tried to help. George and Fred were very popular on the Gryffindor team. Wood, on the other hand, was so annoyed that he had to compromise and let Fred take over.
As for you, get over here and train. Don't you know there are only a few weeks left until the first match?
Wood shouted at them. Time flew by, and soon it was mid-October. In addition to the necessary lessons and Quidditch training, Ivan spent the rest of his time in the library. However, after going through a large amount of information and going through the entire anthology of ancient runes, Ivan still could not find the meaning of the set of character keys.
So what is all this?
Ivan muttered to himself with a headache as he tried to draw a simple character on his notebook during his transfiguration class that afternoon. Harry, who was sitting next to her, looked over curiously. When he saw the words Ivan had written in his notebook, he was stunned. It seemed to come alive in his vision.
Hail stay.
Professor McGonagall called out again. Ivan was somewhat surprised, but stopped in his tracks when he thought Professor McGonagall might be asking him about his progress with the animagus. When the students had left, Ivan hurried forward. Professor McGonagall looked very serious and spoke before Yvonne could.
Hales, I heard the other day about this strange owl that caused quite a commotion in the Hufflepuff girls' dormitory, and even had a nice chat with a Ravenclaw girl.
Chapter 202. 202. It's impossible to admit one 3 years ago. Chapter 198. It's impossible to admit.
Professor, you don't suspect that my owl Marka has gone out, do you? She's been sitting quietly in her room these past few days. She hasn't been out all day. Harry and the others can testify to that. Really, I hope so.
McGonagall raised her eyebrows, gathered up her textbooks, and left the classroom. Ivan was relieved when Professor McGonagall left. He could not help but be glad that he had pushed the progress of the exploration mission to more than 70% and did not need to use the animagus form for the time being. Otherwise, Ivan feared that Professor McGonagall would catch him red-handed if he tried to sneak into the girls' room. Yvonne shuddered at the memory. Calming herself, Ivan left the classroom to find Hermione, Harry, and Ron waiting for her.
Ivan, what did Professor McGonagall say to you? I saw her frowning when she left.
Hermione asked curiously. Ivan didn't want to talk about his dark past, so he casually explained.
Maybe the professor wasn't too happy with my progress.
Harry and Ron were speechless. They knew how good Ivan's transfiguration was, and Professor McGonagall was not impressed.
The professor is too hard on you.
Hermione said, unable to contain herself.
It's okay, it's not exactly strict.
Ivan scratched his head. He had just said it casually and quickly changed the topic.
Let's get to the Quidditch pitch. It's the last day of practice.
The four of them arrived at the training ground, where George, Angelina, and the others were already waiting. Wood was holding a long package in his hand. When he saw Ivan, Wood handed him the package.
What's this for me?
Yvonne reached for the bag and unwrapped it. Inside was a brand new broomstick, made of mahogany with the words Nimbus 2001 engraved on it.
The Nimbus 2001, who bought it?
Yvonne asked in surprise.
Professor McGonagall, of course.
Wood explained with a smile.
I told Professor McGonagall about Slytherin getting their hands on the 7 Nimbus 2001s, and also about you, the team's new flying genius, so Professor McGonagall might have felt the need to increase the Gryffindor team's chances.
Ivan had a strange expression on his face. He had not expected Wood to be so sneaky as to ask Professor McGonagall to get him a new broom. Ivan felt a little strange when he thought about how he had just fooled Professor McGonagall and then turned around to look at the broom she had bought.
Hales, try riding it and get familiar with it while there's still time today.
Wood said. Yvonne nodded and let the matter drop. Professor McGonagall had bought him a broom in an attempt to win the Gryffindor Cup. Early on Saturday morning, Ivan, who had been training late the previous night, was woken up by Harry. Remembering that they were playing Quidditch today, Ivan hurried to the Great Hall, ate a quick breakfast, and hurried to the Quidditch arena. Despite the fact that the match did not start until 11 o'clock, the seats of the four houses were already packed with young wizards. Ivan marveled at the wizarding appeal of Quidditch, as it seemed that most of the Hogwarts students were there. Ivan went into the locker room and changed into his team uniform, which was red and gold, while Wood gave the usual pre-match speech.
This is a Slytherin match. Do not let your guard down just because you defeated them last time. The 7 Nimbus 2001s give them a great advantage in speed, and it is likely that they have figured out how to deal with Hales.
George interrupted with a grin. A smile also appeared on Wood's face, but he gave a stern warning to his fellow Slytherins to show them that a good broom did not make a good ball. After reliving the new tactics, it was soon close to 11 o'clock. As the game was about to begin, Ivan suddenly remembered that Harry had been knocked off his feet by a bludger.
George, keep an eye on Harry later so he doesn't get picked on. Harry, what's wrong? Why do you say that?
George asked curiously.
I'm worried about the Slytherins, but just be careful.
Ivan said vaguely. He couldn't very well say that a pixie named Dobby was going to attack Harry with a bludger. Besides, it was uncertain if it would ever happen. After all, Hogwarts was very peaceful these days, with no basilisk or heir of Slytherin. This made Ivan feel that he had made the right choice in getting hold of Tom Riddle's diary, Otherwise, he would be living in fear of a basilisk attack.
Okay, I'll watch Harry.
Chapter 199, Foul Your Foul. Ivan flew through the semicircle on his broomstick and into the middle of the arena, hearing waves of cheers and applause.
Gryffindor will win. Finish off that bunch of Slytherins.
The stadium was filled with the cries of the Gryffindor Lions, amplified by the sound of the amplified props, and at the top of the house seats was the sound of modified bonfires. The fireworks exploded into the sky, transforming into a vivid lion cub that roared at Slytherin's table in defiance. The young Slytherin wizards did not look happy. Their cheers and encouragement were drowned out by their sworn enemies. At this moment, someone secretly sold the same magical tools as Gryffindor, and Slytherin, who was rich, did not hesitate to give them away. Yvonne, who had been watching the match, noticed this and smiled. Who would have thought that Fred would actually have the skill to bribe a Slytherin into selling for him on this occasion?
Hear my whistle 3.
Madam Hooch, the referee, shouted. Ivan turned his attention back to the match, and as soon as Madam Hooch said the final number, he took the lead.
Wait a minute, Harles, aren't you a beater? Foul, this is a foul.
Several Slytherin players shouted. However, it was not long before someone remembered where Ivan had been standing when he entered the stadium. Understanding this, the Slytherins' faces darkened, indicating that they had all been duped, and that their training in dodging bludgers as well as their two-man, mutual insurance tactics had failed.
What a setup.
Lee Jordan, the game's commentator, exclaimed.
Ivan Harris has us all fooled. He's not a beater, he's a chaser. Those Slytherins wouldn't dream of it. Look at Slytherin Captain Marcus, he's green in the face.
Jordan was holding Fred's complimentary loudspeaker prop, and his impassioned explanation was audible throughout the stadium. Madam Hooch couldn't help but interrupt Jordan.
That's enough, Jordan. You're going to commentate on the game, or I'm going to have to get you out of here and get someone else to do it.
Jordan recalled his tragic experience of being dragged off the pitch, and his tone changed. Just then, Ivan, taking advantage of the Slytherin team's confusion, dribbled the quaffle all the way through the crowd and scored the first goal of the match, winning Gryffindor's first 10 points. There was a great cheer from the Gryffindor table, and many wizards rose from their seats to cheer Ivan on.
It's in. Hales scored the first goal in just over a minute, the fastest ever.
Gryffindor will win. Finish off that bunch of Slytherins. The stadium was filled with the cries of the Gryffindor Lions, amplified by the sound of the amplified props, and at the top of the house seats was the sound of modified bonfires. The fireworks exploded into the sky, transforming into a vivid lion cub that roared at Slytherin's table in defiance. The young Slytherin wizards did not look happy. Their cheers and encouragement were drowned out by their sworn enemies. At this moment, someone secretly sold the same magical tools as Gryffindor, and Slytherin, who was rich, did not hesitate to give them away. Yvonne, who had been watching the match, noticed this and smiled. Who would have thought that Fred would actually have the skill to bribe a Slytherin into selling for him on this occasion?
What did you say you bet, Jordan?
Madam Hooch interrupted suspiciously. Jordan almost choked on his own breath as he tried to explain.
I mean, I had a bet this morning that Gryffindor would score 10 goals.
Chapter 200, Harles is awesome. The dispersal of Slytherin's team caused Ivan's pressure to drop so that he only needed to shake off a chaser to keep him pinned down and break through the keeper's defenses to score. After a period of hard training, flying was not too difficult for Ivan, who was close to level 5. What's more, during training yesterday, Fred surreptitiously told him to make the score as big as possible. As a precaution, Ivan used his GPA to activate the card shortly after opening the game. After fooling the keeper with a feint, Ivan was about to score again when he noticed Angelina's condition. She was now sandwiched between two Slytherin beaters, and Ivan could see at a glance that this was a tactic he had previously encountered on the training ground. However, due to his superior flying skills, he was able to put the two Slytherins who were pursuing him through a lot of trouble, though Angelina was clearly not up to par.
Hales was so close to scoring again, but anyone can make a mistake. and I think he was no exception.
After defending Ivan, Jordan turned his attention to Angelina, who was being pestered by two Slytherin chasers.
We can see the despicable Slytherin trying to knock Angelina off her feet. How can you treat a lady like this? It's extremely nasty.
Hales was so close to scoring again, but anyone can make a mistake, and I think he was no exception.
That was just my guess. Just listen. The real reason is an accident. Hales did not foul the rules. It was an accident.
There was a chorus of jeers and abuse from the Slytherin table, and some people even threw two dung balls onto the stage. Madam Hodge gave Jordan a dirty look, telling him to keep explaining and stop trying to side with her house. Since Yvonne did not actually hit anyone with a quaffle, which was not technically against the rules, Madam Hodge merely blew the whistle to warn them of the foul. Angelina flew to Ivan's side and patted her chest gratefully.
Thank you for earlier, Ivan.
She thought she was going to be forced off her broom by the two Slytherins. Ivan nodded casually, then continued the game with Angelina. According to the strategy agreed upon earlier in the game, Ivan was responsible for stealing the ball and scoring the points, while Angelina was responsible for keeping the opposing keeper busy or stopping the Slytherin players who were trying to cause trouble. With their combined efforts, the Slytherin keeper was so exhausted that he used a double 8 to circle the 3-goal hoops and defend them. Even so, the score continued to grow.
Harry, look out.
George, who had been warned by Ivan earlier, reacted quickly and performed his duties as beater, intercepting the bludger as it flew toward Harry. Harry was momentarily shocked, but before he could thank George, the bludger caught up with him again. George, who was already on his guard, immediately sensed that something was wrong with the bludger and applied for a suspension.
No, don't stop. Just hold on a little longer. I can see the golden snitch.
Chapter 201, Academy Battle. Over the Quidditch pitch, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Harry managed to roll out of the way of the bludger and tried to reach out for the snitch.
Faster, faster.
Harry muttered to himself as he pushed the Nimbus 2000 to its maximum speed, his fingers feeling the rush of the snitch's wings. Victory is at hand.
Lady Hooch, it must be Slytherin, secretly enchanting the bludgers and quaffles. They must be trying to win the game by such a mean trick.
George exclaimed angrily.
Nonsense, we would never do such a thing.
Retorted Marcus, the Slytherin captain.
I think maybe Potter's been out of luck lately.
Malfoy said in a strange voice. The Gryffindor pups were furious at Malfoy's gloating, and even more certain that Slytherins were behind this.
All right, stop arguing.
Madam Hooch saw that the tension between the two parties was getting stronger and quickly stopped them.
In any case, I will report this matter truthfully to your head of house and headmaster Dumbledore and let them decide.
Madam Hooch's eyes lingered on Marcus. She had to admit that when the bludgers and quaffles went out of control, she almost thought Marcus had hired someone to do it. After all, if Harry the Seeker were to be knocked off the field, the Slytherins would profit the most. However, Hooch was well aware that the average young wizard would never be able to cast such a powerful confunding charm on a bludger, let alone take control of the quaffle and combine forces to attack Harry.
Lady Hooch, I think the best thing we can do now is to get Harry to the hospital wing.
Yvonne interrupted.
Oh yes.
Madam Hooch exclaimed when she noticed the pained expression on Harry's face as he lay on the ground.
I'll get Potter to the hospital wing as fast as I can.
Get.
Lockhart's clear voice rang out from the crowd. Harry's head spun at the sound of the voice, and he grabbed hold of Madam Hooch with his good left hand. Madam Hooch had a strange expression on her face, but she nodded and used a levitation charm to levitate Harry, then flew him back to the castle on her broomstick.
Where's Potter?
Lockhart finally managed to squeeze through the crowd, but Harry was nowhere to be seen.
Ms. Hooch took him to the hospital wing, Professor.
Ivan said, pointing to the two men who had flown away.
Well, that's a shame.
Lockhart said, disappointed that he had lost an opportunity to impress the crowd.
You know, I used to do some healing magic in my travels, and it only took me a second to heal Potter.
However, none of the hundreds of wizards present paid him any attention. Instead, they were subtly divided into two camps, casting hostile glances at each other. Due to Madame Hooch's presence, the Gryffindors, despite being angry at Slytherin for tampering with the game, did not dare to do anything rash, but things have changed. The Slytherin students, on the other hand, were just as angry at losing a match and being slandered by their opponents. The smell of gunpowder grew stronger.
What do you all want?
Lockhart asked, taking a few steps back as he sensed the danger. Lockhart's words were like a fuse that ignited the stadium, and for a moment, multicolored magical lights flashed across the Quidditch pitch.
Expelliarmus. Tongue lock. Stupefy. Stop it, all of you.
Chapter 202, I'll wake up when I've thought about it.
All of you stop. If you don't stop, I'm going to kill you.
Lockhart shouted, waving his wand after nearly being hit by a jinx.
Immobulus, all immobulus.
Lockhart tried to use the immobilization charm to save his dignity as a professor. Unfortunately, the spell backfired, and Lockhart only saw beautiful sparks coming from the tip of his wand. And then,
Who's there?
Lockhart turned around, furious, and was about to look to see who the bastard was who had thrown them, when he saw more of them flying towards him. Lockhart once again took his chances and cast an obstacle spell to try and stop the dung-filled eggs. However, his charm went out of control again, turning into a powerful explosive charm that caused all the dung balls in the air to explode, causing foul-smelling yellow liquid to rain down from the sky.
Petrify all, armor yourselves.
Unaware that Lockhart was watching her, Ivan used his wand to petrify a Slytherin who was casting a spell on him, then quickly cast armor on himself. His protective ring was temporarily unusable after resisting multiple spells.
Will someone please tell me exactly what happened here?
When McGonagall heard the news, she rushed to the stadium, but before she could enter the stadium, she saw the colorful light of the charm. There were many screaming Slytherin wizards lying on the ground, most of them having been jinxed, some of the more unfortunate ones having their faces smashed in by dung balls and being knocked out cold. McGonagall, shaking with anger, waved her wand to undo the various charms that had been placed on the Slytherins, then turned to look at Wood and the others, who were trembling with fear. In McGonagall's opinion, Slytherin was actually outnumbered by Gryffindor, but the fact that they had been beaten to such a state made it clear that Ivan was behind the attack.
Professor McGonagall, here's the thing.
Ivan took a step forward and made no attempt to hide the truth from her. After all, there were so many people here. There was no way to hide it, so he might as well tell the truth. After explaining why, Ivan paused, then continued.
Anyway, because of this, there were some conflicts. I was worried that someone might not be able to control the power of the spell and cause casualties, so I stopped the chaos.
This is your way of stopping the chaos? Professor McGonagall stared at the Slytherins, who were just getting to their feet. Yvonne nodded obediently.
If you knock the enemy down, then there's no fight left.
McGonagall glared at him, then turned to Wood and the others and scolded them.
You people are such a disappointment to me. Nothing like this has ever happened at Hogwarts since I started teaching. 200 points will be deducted from Gryffindor for fighting on the pitch.
Professor McGonagall said coldly. 200 points.
Professor, it was those Slytherins who tampered with the Quidditch game first. Enough.
Professor McGonagall interrupted. Ms. Hodge mentioned this to me when she informed me. She told me in no uncertain terms that a powerful confunding charm had been cast on the bludger, and that as far as I know there are none in the entire school.
Where's your Professor Lockhart?
McGonagall asked, looking around for him. If she remembered correctly, Hodge said Lockhart was on the pitch today.
Professor Lockhart is over there.
Chapter 203, Do You Want to Be As Strong as Me? Professor McGonagall looked at the unconscious Lockhart with disappointment. She usually regarded Lockhart as a vain and mediocre liar, but she had never expected him to be unable to control a group of lesser wizards. Professor McGonagall sighed, waved her wand, and summoned a basin of water to pour on Lockhart's face, trying to wake him up. Ivan, who was watching, had an odd expression on his face, as if he had a theory. Professor McGonagall's face darkened, but she didn't say anything. Instead, she used a levitation charm to lift up some of the young wizards who had been injured in the melee and transport them to the hospital wing. However, as there were too many people injured, Professor McGonagall turned to Ivan.
Take the rest of them and Professor Lockhart.
Ivan nodded and cast a simultaneous levitation charm to transport the rest of them away.
As for you,
McGonagall called out to the group of young Gryffindors before leaving.
I'll give you 1 hour to clean this place up, and no cleaning magic.
Wood and the others, who were already on tenterhooks due to the deduction of points, wailed when they heard that the stadium would be cleaned up in an hour without magic. George and Fred were devastated. They knew very well that the dung bombs they made not only smelled bad, but were also very difficult to get rid of. However, Professor McGonagall did not care about this. If she did not see a clean court when she returned, she would not be punished so simply. The Slytherin house serpents had a rough time, as McGonagall ordered them to stay and clean as well. As for how many house points will be deducted from Slytherin for this affray, that will be decided by their head of house Snape.
Oh my God, what's going on? Is there an attack on the campus? Even Professor Lockhart is injured.
Madame Pomfrey hurried over and instructed Ivan to place the patient on the empty bed. Professor McGonagall shook her head.
No, it was just a bunch of football-watching students. As for Professor Lockhart, he was probably just tired and wanted to get some rest.
Madame Pomfrey, a skilled healer, soon realized that Lockhart was pretending to be unconscious and shot him a look of disdain. Madame Pomfrey was relieved to find that the wounds of the young wizards were superficial and could be treated with a simple healing charm.
Where's Harry, Madame Pomfrey?
Yvonne asked.
I've dealt with Potter's injuries, but he's still unconscious. I think he'll wake up after half a day's sleep.
Madame Pomfrey explained gently, then went to deal with the others. Professor McGonagall did not stay long. After sending the young witches and wizards to the hospital wing, she left without calling Ivan. She may have thought that Yvonne wanted to spend some time with her friends.
Woke up.
What's wrong with me? Why am I in the hospital wing? Hals, can you tell me what just happened?
Lockhart asked blankly. Yvonne paused and watched the performance in silence. However, Ivan did not expect Lockhart to
Wake up.
At a time like this, he kept trying to guess why, but he replied naturally.
Professor Lockhart, you must have been knocked out cold on the pitch. Is that so?
Lockhart asked casually, his eyes fixed on Ivan's ring and bracelet.
I saw you cast an armor charm on the Quidditch field without a spell. Is that because you have some sort of magical prop?
Ivan looked at Lockhart with amusement. He had a vague idea why Lockhart was looking for him, so he got straight to the point.
Yes, these magical tools were created by me using many precious materials. For example, this protective ring can instantly cast a spell similar to the shield charm by pouring magic into it.
Ivan went on and on about the protective ring's effects. Lockhart was very impressed. The chaos at the Quidditch pitch had thoroughly embarrassed him. Lockhart was in desperate need of something to save his reputation. For example, a public demonstration of his
Super strength. How about it, Professor? Do you want to buy a protective ring? I can make you a deluxe gold-plated one.
Chapter 204, Dobby's Warning.
Are there any other offensive magical items you can make?
Lockhart asked. However, Lockhart realized that this was not very reserved, so he cleared his throat and changed the subject.
Of course.
Are there any other offensive magical items you can make? Lockhart asked. However, Lockhart realized that this was not very reserved, so he cleared his throat and changed the subject. Of course.
Professor Lockhart, you have my deepest sympathy. I can customize a set of magical objects for you that will definitely meet your needs. If you have enough galleons.
Ivan's lips curved. Lockhart did not hesitate to say. Money was never an issue.
Ivan, have you just come from the hospital wing? How's Harry? Is he all right?
Harry's injuries have been treated by Madame Pomfrey, but he's still unconscious. He'll probably have to spend the night in the hospital wing, won't he?
Yvonne explained as she tied the letter to Marca's foot and released her. Ron was relieved, and then he angrily cursed the Slytherins, thinking that they must be behind this. Late at night, in the Hogwarts hospital wing, Harry trembled with anger at the sight of the small, ugly house elf.
So you're the one who boarded up the station so I couldn't catch the train. Did you know I was almost expelled from school for this? Dobby.
Dobby shook his large, wrinkled head and showed Harry his 10 bandaged fingers.
Dobby had to burn his hands with a hot iron.
Dobby said sadly,
But Dobby didn't care, sir. Dobby thought Harry Potter was safe, but he never dreamed you'd go the other way.
Dobby's eyes glistened with tears and his large ears flapped as he stared at Harry, as if he was heartbroken that Harry had failed him.
Anyway.
Screamed Dobby.
Enough, it's safe.
Harry threw a pillow at Dobby, glaring at him angrily.
Except you. Dobby knew you wouldn't believe him, sir. That's why he used the bludger and the quaffle.
Dobby took the hit without flinching. It didn't hurt, but a tear rolled down his cheek. Like a protagonist in a bittersweet play who does good deeds that are never understood. Harry, however, showed no sympathy at all. Instead, he was so angry that he wanted to strangle the house elf in front of him.
So you're the one who tampered with the bludger. Do you really want to run me over?
Harry's anger flared.
Not kill you, sir. Why would you think that?
Dobby shook his head wildly, shaking with fear and trembling slightly.
Dobby's only trying to save your life. Even being sent home wounded is better than being here, sir. All Dobby wants is for Harry Potter to suffer a little injury and be sent home.
Dobby's large, watery eyes were wide open, and his hands were clutching a sheet to cover his emaciated body.
Why would you rather have me broken and sent to the hospital than have me leave Hogwarts? I bet you wouldn't tell me, would you?
Harry asked sarcastically. Harry could not understand her words and repeatedly tried to say that she was thinking of him, only to nearly get himself killed twice.
You call this doing yourself a favor. If Harry Potter knew what he meant to us humble, enslaved little people, he'd think better of it.
Under Harry's sardonic gaze, Dobby picked up the pillow that Harry had thrown on the floor, and, as more tears fell from his eyes, he murmured to Harry about the tragic past of house elves. Dobby then wept and thanked Harry for defeating the Dark Lord, which made life easier for the house elves.
When Dobby was at home, he heard his master say that he had sold it to a young Hogwarts wizard. The Dark Lord had left it to his master. It was very, very evil.
Dobby froze for a moment, then realized he had said something he shouldn't have, grabbed Harry's water bottle from the bedside table and smashed it against his head.
Bad Dobby,
said Dobby, smashing it. The sound of Dobby's head hitting the water jar was loud enough to make Harry wince. Harry realized the gravity of the situation when he heard Dobby mention the Dark Lord. He grabbed Dobby's arm to stop him from injuring himself.
Tell me, what was it? Who did your owner sell it to? And how did you know he brought it to the school?
Chapter 205, You Can't Beat Him, So You Hit Me.
And who is your master? Tell me.
Harry shouted, grabbing Dobby by the wrist.
Dobby can't say, sir. No more questions about poor Dobby.
Dobby murmured, blinking his bell-sized eyes at Harry.
All Dobby could tell him was that the school was going to be very dangerous, because Dobby had seen the young wizard open the dangerous thing.
So you can't beat him, so you hit me. Throw me out.
Harry rolled his eyes and had to endure Dobby's horrible screams as he shouted.
Then tell me who the little wizard really is.
Dobby hesitated as to whether or not he should tell her. After all, as far as he was concerned, that was his master's plan and he should not reveal it. Dobby's concern for Harry Potter won out, and he opened his mouth to speak. The next moment, however, as if he had sensed something, Dobby snapped his fingers and disappeared. Harry reached out to grab him but missed as footsteps sounded outside the door, and he quickly lay down and pretended to be asleep. Click.
Professor Snape was willing to deduct points from the Slytherin house.
Ivan asked curiously, remembering that Snape was quite protective. Ron, who was eating hot porridge, looked up and gloated.
Of course, I heard Snape was furious when we beat the crap out of those Slytherins on the Quidditch pitch.
Ivan realized that Slip was probably angry that Slytherin had lost points to Gryffindor in the melee. George and Fred joined them, grinning.
Anyway, you were so cool yesterday. We all saw you go up and knock a dozen Slytherins out of the way. If you hadn't been there, we might not have one.
Ivan said casually. As far as he was concerned, there was nothing to be happy about after knocking out a bunch of brats.
You should have calmed down yesterday instead of fighting Slytherin on the Quidditch pitch without knowing what was going on.
And who is your master? Tell me, Harry shouted, grabbing Dobby by the wrist. Dobby can't say, sir. No more questions about poor Dobby.
Hales, when will those things you mentioned be done?
Ivan said, throwing up his hands in exasperation.
But I can't wait a month.
Lockhart was pacing the office so anxiously that Ivan was beginning to feel faint.
Then give me 500 galleons, and I'll try to get it done in 2 weeks.
Ivan said after a moment's hesitation.
Okay, 500 galleons in 2 weeks.
Chapter 206, Lockhart the Palladium Warrior. After getting another 500 galleons from Lockhart, Ivan became extremely busy over the next few days. The rest of the time was spent in the room of requirement working on a new formula, except for daily lessons and the strange characters given by the continuing query system. A protective ring with an instantaneous shield charm was certainly not enough to satisfy Lockhart's needs. Fortunately, although time was of the essence, there was an abundance of funds, allowing Ivan to experiment and put his ideas into action without worrying about the cost of the materials. Within a few days, Ivan's alchemy had advanced by leaps and bounds. Every once in a while, the proficiency increase notification would ring in Ivan's head. Another piece of good news is about the Wizard Wheeze's workshop. A few days earlier, the Gryffindor-Slytherin House War was advertising George and Fred's joke merchandise. As a result, their stock of dung bombs, skiving snacks, boom flags, and automatic quills was booming, and George and Fred were so busy they couldn't stop talking to Ivan about expanding their business.
Hire some help, that would be nice,
said Ivan after a moment's consideration. Dung bombs and truant sweets were simple magical trinkets that were not difficult to make. A junior wizard in his or her senior year could easily produce one if he or she was told how. Add to that the fact that Hogwarts was full of students who were easy to get rid of, and the school year did not cost much more than a few galleons at the end of the year. The trio did not care about the risk of being imitated if the recipe was leaked. As long as they kept their advanced knowledge under wraps, no one would be able to compete with them. Moreover, it is important for a joke shop to be able to produce a steady stream of innovative new products in order to maintain novelty. There are few people who can match George and Fred in this regard.
It just looks too cheap.
Ivan muttered to himself, rubbing his chin and looking at the 3 ordinary magical objects in front of him. This is really not what a 2,000 galleon should look like. With this in mind, Ivan continued his transformation, such as plating the ring with gold paint and adding a large sapphire in the middle. Although this would not improve the effects of the item, it would at least seem more valuable, right? Ivan nodded in satisfaction, then proceeded to alter the cloak to a flashy red-gold color, adding fancy patterns to the gloves.
A dueling club.
Yes, the dueling club,
Lockhart said triumphantly, tossing his quill aside and blowing on the ink.
After much difficulty, I managed to persuade Dumbledore, the old weasel, to give me a platform on which to show off my skills.
Lockhart promptly changed his mind, then turned to Ivan and said eagerly, with a hint of anticipation in his voice.
Has everything you made for me been done, Hales? Of course.
Ivan nodded and tossed a gold ring to Lockhart. Lockhart put the ring on his finger and looked at the bright red cloak and the beautifully patterned gloves.
Not bad, it suits me,
he said with satisfaction.
What do they do?
Lockhart asked Ivan.
The ring, cloak, and gloves were enchanted with the disarming charm, the armor charm, and the petrification charm, respectively.
Ivan explained, then added.
All you have to do is inject your magic and it's released, saving you the trouble of chanting.
Lockhart's eyes lit up. If he disguised himself well enough, he would be able to tell everyone that he had advanced non-jinx techniques. Lockhart tried to point his wand at a porcelain bottle in the distance. There was a flash of grayish-white magical light, and the surface of the bottle froze and turned gray. This is the effect of the petrifaction charm.
But how come there are only 3 spells?
Chapter 207. A little wizard like you must have many wonderful stories.
You talk as if you can do all this magic on a regular basis.
Ivan said, raising his eyebrows in disapproval.
Before I was cursed, I was.
Lockhart opened his mouth to start on the story he'd made up, but Ivan cut him off.
If you are not satisfied, Professor, the deal is off. No, 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 I'm quite satisfied.
Lockhart shook his head sheepishly. He was hosting the dueling club tomorrow, and if Ivan were to pull the plug on the deal now, his plans would be ruined. Lockhart was also well aware that high-end magical objects were not easy to create, especially those that could directly increase a wizard's combat effectiveness. The great families with legacies kept their heritage to themselves, and very little relevant knowledge was leaked.
Where's the rest of the galleons, Professor?
Yvonne asked, not wanting to waste her time with Lockhart.
Don't worry, I'm ready.
Lockhart took a bag out of his office drawer and placed it on the table. Yvonne took it and opened it. The bag had been enchanted with an extension charm, and the interior was so large that it shone with golden galleons. There seemed to be a large number of them. Ivan tapped his wand on the table, and the galleons in the bag bounced up and down, 50 to a stack. A total of 30 sets of 1,500 galleons. Together with the initial 500 galleons deposit from Lockhart and another 500 galleons of overtime pay, it was just enough. Lockhart watched as Ivan easily waved his wand and placed the galleon back into its pouch.
To be honest, this is the first time I've seen a young wizard as good as you, earning so much gold from me at such a young age.
Lockhart asked with a smile. Due to his defeat at Ivan's hands at the beginning of the school year, Lockhart came to Hogwarts to gather information on Ivan. The collection was beyond Lockhart's expectations. According to a young wizard named Seamus, Ivan killed a 20-foot, 12-foot troll at the beginning of the school year. Hagrid was saved by a dragon in the Forbidden Forest, and the last defense against the dark arts professor was killed. According to the grapevine, Professor Chino was also in contact with you-know-who.
My story, lots of them of course, but I don't think you'd want to know.
Ivan was instantly alarmed when Lockhart mentioned it, but he kept his composure and shook his head.
That's too bad because I love stories.
Lockhart sighed ruefully. Lockhart tied the red gold cloak around his body and looked ostentatiously into the mirror. After a moment, he seemed to remember something and turned to Ivan, who was leaving.
By the way, can the protective cloak you gave me automatically resist the spell? No, it doesn't have that kind of effect. You have to stimulate it.
Ivan shook his head, put away the bag full of galleons, and left. 1.
Armor.
As soon as Ivan uttered the incantation, Lockhart's voice rang out.
I forgot everything.
A flash of white light hit Ivan with extraordinary speed, and the defensive barrier of armor that had been erected around Ivan's body was shattered. However, as the protective ring on Ivan's left hand lit up, a second magical barrier blocked the white light and repelled it. Lockhart was so surprised that he did not have time to dodge. The moment the white light touched him, Lockhart hurriedly activated his protective cloak. The same magical barrier lit up around him, deflecting the white light to the wall. Lockhart reflexively hid himself in terror, and a moment later he was fine. It was then that he realized that the memory charm had been deflected by the protective cloak he had bought from Ivan. Ivan's voice filled the office.
Professor, were you planning to cast a memory charm on me?
Ivan said with a playful expression. He was also surprised by the strength of the Lockhart's memory charm. It was able to break through his shield charm. No wonder so many powerful wizards had fallen for it.
Of course not, why would I? I just wanted to see if the stuff you gave me worked.
Lockhart waved his hand, ready to argue. However, seeing Ivan's increasingly impatient expression, Lockhart knew that Ivan would not believe him, so he admitted it.
Well, I'm prepared to cast a memory charm on you, yes, so no one will know that I rely on these trinkets for my magic. But now that you know that, you'll soon forget, just like any other wizard.
Lockhart said confidently.
Are you sure?
Ivan asked with a quizzical look on his face. He thought Lockhart always had a strange confidence. Could it be that he had been flattered so much that he really thought he was a master of magic? Lockhart raised his eyebrows.
After all, you seem to have made me something better than what you have, don't you?
He continued briskly, taking a few steps forward and flicking a switch.
Also, I forgot to mention that this office has good soundproofing, and you can't get out.
Chapter 208. You want to use the things I gave you to deal with me.
I have to say, your trinkets are beyond my expectations. They're able to withstand my memory charm, which some adult wizards can't even do.
Lockhart said admiringly. He had expected Ivan to be caught off guard and have some of his memories wiped, as other wizards were. He did not expect Ivan to be able to detect his attack in advance and even cast a spell to reflect his memory charm. Fortunately, the anti-curse cloak he had bought for a large sum of money was more useful than he had expected, and was able to ward off the reflected memory charm. This was partly due to Lockhart's prediction, but also because he realized that he was no longer the imposter he once was.
So you're going to use what I gave you against me?
Ivan asked.
I'm sure you didn't think this day would come when you were making these, did you?
Lockhart looked very pleased with himself, but when he saw Ivan's calm expression, his expression changed, and he smiled and took 2 steps back.
Don't tell me you left a back door open. I wouldn't do such a thing.
Ivan shook his head. He was not skilled enough in alchemy to leave a back door open without being seen. Lockhart was about to breathe a sigh of relief when Ivan continued.
But why do you think I didn't make myself a set of magical objects?
Isn't he short of money?
Lockhart asked curiously.
Of course not.
Ivan's face darkened, and he raised his wand.
Now I'm going to give you a lesson. The truly powerful people in the wizarding world don't just pile up on crooked stuff.
Lockhart raised his eyebrows, not quite sure what Ivan meant.
Godspeed, Shadowless.
Ivan whispered and cast the Godspeed Shadowless charm, which had been enhanced with enchanted runes. Several invisible magic waves cut through the air, emitting strange sounds.
It's full of obstacles.
Lockhart knew that dodging was useless, so he gritted his teeth and cast the obstacle spell. Lockhart's potential burst forth in the face of danger, causing the magic to go berserk once more, transforming into a dark blue fireball that whizzed forward. Lockhart looked back at Ivan and dropped his wand without a trace of dignity. He was about to say something when Ivan spoke again.
Hang the golden bell upside down.
The recently damaged cloak did not protect Lockhart this time, causing him to lose control and flip over. He mistakenly thought Ivan was going to attack him and shouted in panic.
Stop.
Lockhart rambled on, going so far as to introduce himself in the usual fashion.
No, you're just a liar who uses memory charms.
Ivan crouched down and pointed his wand at Lockhart's nose.
I'll give you 500, no, 1,000 galleons.
Lockhart shouted as Ivan's wand began to glow.
2,000.
Ivan added.
Of course.
Chapter 209. It's fine if you can't remember, your injuries will make you remember.
Don't forget it's 2,000 galleons.
Ivan saw Lockhart's fear-filled face and didn't bother to intimidate him. He used the shadowless shield to cut the lock.
Also, I'm not interested in exposing your identity, but I don't want anything like this to happen again.
Ivan opened the door, took one last look at Lockhart and left, leaving his words echoing in the cluttered office.
It's okay if you can't remember. The cuts on your face will help you remember.
After Ivan left, Lockhart sat down on the floor, unable to hold on any longer. Lockhart touched it and found traces of blood on his hand. Lockhart jerked his head towards the shattered mirror, where a shallow cut had appeared on his face.
I guess I'll have to learn memory charms sometime.
Ivan sighed. Whether it was in Hermione's room or his conflict with Lockhart, if he knew how to cast the memory charm, he wouldn't have had to go through the trouble of wiping their memories. However, he had too many things to do recently, so he did not have time to learn. It just so happened that Lockhart was a master of memory charms, and Ivan thought he might as well wait until Lockhart had 2,000 galleons ready, and then take it to him. She wondered how Lockhart would explain the mess in his office. It was not easy to fix something that had been destroyed with the shadowless blade. However, after only one day, Ivan realized that this little problem was not a problem for Lockhart, who was very good at sweet-talking. Because suddenly, there was a rumor going around Hogwarts.
Lorehart's bragging again. I bet he thought we'd keep an eye on him once he got hold of the news.
Hermione interrupted before Ron could finish his sentence.
No, it's probably true. When Professor Lockhart asked Filch to move the table yesterday, I saw it cut in half.
Don't forget it's 2,000 galleons. Ivan saw Lockhart's fear-filled face and didn't bother to intimidate him. He used the shadowless shield to cut the lock. Also, I'm not interested in exposing your identity, but I don't want anything like this to happen again.
And you believed Lockhart. If he was as good as he claimed, he wouldn't have passed out at the Quidditch pitch.
Ron retorted, shaking his head.
I didn't say Lockhart wasn't a liar.
Hermione continued, glaring at him.
I told you what I saw, I didn't lie.
Then Lockhart could have fooled you somehow, say by sewing these things off and pretending to be magic.
Harry suggested.
That's right, everyone knows Lockhart is only slightly better than Squibs. If he could do magic, he would have used a regeneration charm to fix everything.
Ron said confidently. Ivan shook his head when the trio got into an argument on the subject, not joining in the discussion. He couldn't possibly say that he was the one who had used the traceless magic to cut it, could he? Yvonne wondered if Snape would guess something from this and go after Lockhart, asking how he had managed to steal her magic.
Ivan, are you looking for something?
Hermione asked curiously. She had noticed that Ivan seemed to be a little distracted lately, looking for something in the library.
Do you know any of these characters?
Yvonne asked, deciding that Hermione might be able to help her. Hermione looked at the paper for a moment, thinking hard.
Well, any ideas?
Yvonne asked.
No, I don't know anything about it either. Maybe it's some sort of magical rune or symbol.
Hermione said sheepishly, sticking out her tongue. Ivan was more or less disappointed, but he didn't take it to heart. He had been looking for clues for a long time, but to no avail. During the afternoon break, Hermione took the initiative to help find clues to the runes, while Ivan went to the bookshelf and picked up a copy of Synthetic Mysteries. He wondered if the shapes of the characters referred to something, like a location. However, a thorough search of the entire book did not yield anything similar. Ivan returned the book to its rightful place with a sigh, and was about to leave with the piece of paper in his hand when he bumped into a young witch. Ivan was able to take a few steps back without incident, but the man stumbled into a shelf and dropped his book.
I'm sorry, are you okay?
Chapter 210, The Dueling Club and the New Clue. Transfiguration, a little story you don't know. When she saw the title of the book and the passage about the animagus, Ivan gave Luna a guilty look. Could she have guessed something? Why else would he read such a book? Luna's silver-gray eyes were still fixed on Ivan's, and when Ivan was at a loss for what to do, the little witch suddenly frowned and murmured gloomily.
You didn't deliver my letter last time.
Yvonne said grudgingly, admitting who she was. He had no choice but to admit it, as Luna was obviously convinced of his status. Moreover, it seemed that the other party did not tell Professor Flitwick or Professor McGonagall and instead helped him to hide it. Otherwise, Professor McGonagall would have come to him in a rage.
So the owl is your animagus?
Luna asked, gesturing again and looking at Ivan inquiringly.
Right.
Yvonne nodded, and this time he understood what Luna was gesturing about. It was the outline of an owl. Ivan then asked curiously,
How did you find out that my transformed owl didn't have any flaws?
The animagus was a fairly advanced transfiguration spell, and once it was completed, even a wizard proficient in transfiguration would find it difficult to detect.
Because a real owl doesn't steal people's letters or read the papers, does it?
Luna tilted her head, her tone light. Ivan was speechless. It seemed he had overstepped his bounds. Add to that the fact that the owl he transformed into paid such close attention to the headlines of the Quibbler, and it was no wonder Luna could easily guess his identity. Ivan quickly thought of the various flaws in his transformation. It was just that Ivan had always felt that Luna lacked common sense and was keen to pursue strange things, and that she might be able to accept a rather special owl. He didn't expect them to be so clever.
Did you write this a passage?
Luna asked suddenly. Ivan paused and looked at Luna in surprise. He grabbed her wrist and asked,
I read this somewhere else. There are secrets in these characters. Can you read them?
No, I can't read it, but I think it's supposed to be a passage.
Luna's voice wavered. Intuition, the spark of hope in Ivan's heart cooled. The system had given him a key, possibly the key to unlocking a place, which apparently did not fit with what Luna had just said. When Luna got her book back, she didn't talk to Ivan anymore. Instead, she walked back into the library, mumbling to herself.
That must not have been left behind by Lady Ravenclaw. She's not that narcissistic.
Ivan faintly heard Luna's whisper, but was unsure exactly what she was saying. However, Luna's behavior had always been strange, and Ivan could not guess what she was thinking. He suddenly remembered that he had not asked her why she could understand owl. Yvonne thought about it for a while, then gave up and went to Hermione, who was reading a book on her chair.
Hermione, did you find a clue about the characters?
Yvonne asked.
No, I checked both the ancient Egyptian characters and the magical symbols, but I couldn't find anything.
Hermione covered the book in disappointment. Hermione hesitated for a moment, then pretended not to care and asked.
Who was that girl? Was she a new student this year?
Well, her name is Luna, and she's from Ravenclaw House, so I thought I'd ask her if she could read them.
Ivan explained.
And as a result,
Hermione began nervously.
Luna said it might be a compliment to someone.
Ivan began.
She can read it.
Hermione was surprised and then a little upset. She had read so many books and yet she could not read as much as a Ravenclaw girl.
Luna must have guessed it from her intuition.
Ivan said uncertainly. He remembered that Luna's intuition seemed to be quite accurate in the past, but he did not know why she had made such an unreliable judgment. Intuition? That worked. Hermione was speechless for a while. She was not impressed with things like intuition, which she considered to be nothing more than wild speculation. Ivan and Hermione stayed in the library lounge for the rest of the afternoon, and when it was almost time for dinner, they walked together into the Great Hall. When she reached the door, Ivan saw a new parchment on the notice board in the entrance hall. A small crowd gathered to read the parchment, including Ron and Harry.
Oh my God, Ivan, come and see. There's going to be a dueling club at school. It's at 8 o'clock tonight.
Ron exclaimed excitedly as he turned around and saw Ivan.
What dueling club? What's that for?
Hermione asked, curious.
It should be a lesson on how to duel, as such knowledge will come in handy one day.
Ron fantasized that he would one day be able to battle a powerful enemy like the protagonist of a biography. Ivan had been informed of this and was not surprised. She even admired Lockhart's tenacity. He had just been dealt a blow yesterday, but he was back on his feet today.
Ivans, you'll be there at night, won't you? Of course, I'm also very curious about this dueling club.
Chapter 211. I have locked the door, none of you can leave today.
I wonder who will teach us today.
Hermione speculated as she made her way to the front of the group.
I have heard it said that Flitwick was a dueling champion in his youth. Perhaps he was the one who taught us how to duel.
Harry suggested that Professor McGonagall might be the one teaching.
I thought you'd be able to guess who it belonged to just by looking at this gilded stage.
Ivan's merciless blow to their heads shredded their fantasies.
You don't mean...
Looking at the gold inlaid stage, Harry's mind conjured a figure and he gulped, hoping for the best.
It can't be.
Ron was in despair. He didn't think he should have come.
That's right, Lockhart.
Ivan said, pointing to the entrance to the Great Hall. The trio looked over and saw Gilderoy Lockhart. However, Lockhart seemed to be different today. In addition to his purple-red robe, he also had a golden-red cloak on his back and a rectangular piece of magical tape on the side of his face.
Hello, everyone.
Lockhart enthusiastically greeted the assembled wizards as he stepped onto the stage. As he raised his hand, the gold ring on Lockhart's finger, which was encrusted with sapphires, was revealed to the crowd. The crowd booed as Lockhart took the stage. Lockhart pretended not to hear him, cleared his throat, and continued loudly.
Gather around, everyone closer, listen to me. Well, your headmaster, Dumbledore, gave me special permission, your defense against the dark arts professor, to open this dueling club.
I wonder who will teach us today, Hermione speculated as she made her way to the front of the group. I have heard it said that Flitwick was a dueling champion in his youth. Perhaps he was the one who taught us how to duel.
Professor, can we leave now? I think I'd rather stay in my room and play wizard's chess.
Marcus was not alone in his belief that the dueling club was run by Lockhart, and the crowd's hopes were dashed.
No, it can't. I have to tell you, it's extremely humiliating to avoid duels in the wizarding world.
Lockhart shook his head. Lockhart then pointed at the door and shouted.
So to prevent anyone from leaving a mark of shame, I have locked the door to the hall, and no one is to leave until the lesson is over.
The group of young wizards turned to look at the closed doors of the exhibition hall, speechless.
How could he do that?
Ron complained. Ivan, on the other hand, understood that Lockhart was desperate to use the dueling club as an opportunity to salvage his reputation at Hogwarts. Lockhart was certainly not going to let anyone go in order to get a bigger audience for the big show. Swish. As they argued, a blinding red light shot up from the top of Lockhart's wand. The light from the spell hit the ceiling and exploded, creating brilliant sparks that attracted everyone's attention. Lockhart nodded his head in satisfaction. Although it wasn't the spell he wanted to cast, it worked just as well, didn't it?
Ahem.
Lockhart's gaze swept across the audience as he tried to decide who should be chosen for his debut.
That's right, don't look at anyone else.
Lockhart pointed at Marcus, who had previously insulted him.
May.
Marcus was nonplussed, but remembering that Lockhart was an idiot of a professor, he went on stage. Ivan was surprised Lockhart hadn't asked Snape to give a demonstration. Had he learned his lesson?
Look, the cloak on Lockhart's back is torn.
Ron sneered. When Lockhart turned around, Ivan noticed that there was a large tear in his golden red cloak. Ivan thought about it for a moment and realized that this must be the protective cloak, which had taken a hit from his enhanced shadowless blade and caused some damage. This does not prevent the normal use of the protective cloak, but the protective effect may be weaker.
Good, let's begin.
Lockhart shouted from the stage, raising his wand.
Now bow.
Lockhart gave a flamboyant bow, indicating that Marcus should do the same. Marcus's action was perfunctory, and he only lowered his head slightly before he eagerly gripped his wand. Marcus felt he would soon be able to knock out a professor in full view of the crowd, something he could boast about for years. Lockhart explained how to hold a wand during a duel and reassured everyone that this was not a real duel and that he would not take Marcus's life. Even if he could easily do it.
Shall we begin, Professor?
Marcus's face darkened at Lockhart's attempt to belittle him.
Of course.
Lockhart looked at Marcus, who was growing impatient, and raised his eyebrows in a dueling gesture, counting down.
1.
Chapter 212, Lockhart in the Show.
I bet Lockhart will make a fool of himself, or I'll eat all my wizard's chess.
The moment they exchanged blows, Ron turned around and swore, but when he turned around and saw the result, he was stunned.
Then you've got quite an appetite, Ron's.
Yvonne commented on cue.
What the hell just happened?
Harry asked, confused, as he watched Marcus cast a charm that hit Lockhart and bounced back. Harry wasn't the only one. The crowd of young wizards couldn't believe their eyes. It had all happened so fast.
It's the shield charm. Professor Lockhart bounced off Marcus's spell with the shield charm.
Hermione exclaimed, judging from the effect.
No way, I didn't hear him say the shield charm.
Ron was incredulous.
It's actually possible to cast spells without chanting. Powerful wizards almost always have no spell-casting skills.
Ivan explained. Not only that, but even a young wizard could do this after a period of practice if he or she understood how a spell worked. Just as Harry did in his 6th year at Hogwarts, He used the knowledge left behind by Snape to cast the uncursed golden bell.
A powerful wizard. Are you sure you're talking about Lockhart?
Ron had a strange expression on his face.
I didn't say that.
Ivan shrugged.
That's right, I just used the armor charm. Miss Granger, 10 points.
Lockhart turned around and applauded loudly.
And Mr. Harles.
Lockhart said, looking at Ivan.
He's guessed that I'm a powerful non-cursed wizard, and I'm going to give him 50 points.
50 points. The young wizards were stunned, and Hermione wanted to say something but stopped herself. Why did she only get 10 points? Ivan scratched his head, surprised by Lockhart's sudden outburst. However, Ivan soon realized that Lockhart was probably trying to please him.
Professor.
Marcus, who had been forgotten for a long time, shouted. Marcus was filled with regret. He could not understand why Lockhart had suddenly become so powerful. The public tap dancing was unpleasant, so Marcus had to swallow his pride and ask Lockhart to lift his spell.
There's no hurry.
Lockhart shook his head with a smile and looked at the audience.
Now let me show you how to effectively overpower your opponent and render him incapable of fighting back.
As he spoke, Lockhart casually flicked his wand. There was a blinding flash of light. Marcus was knocked back by the force of the blow and crashed into the wall behind him. Marcus's wand flew out of his hand and landed in Lockhart's. Lockhart put on a show of introducing the disarming charm that he had cast with the help of a magical tool.
This is the disarming charm. As you can see, this Slytherin was easily taken by me.
With that, Lockhart playfully winked at the young witches, and his high-pitched voice echoed throughout the hall.
After all, there aren't many wizards like me in the whole wizarding world.
At Lockhart's announcement, there was a huge round of applause from the audience. Some of the witches screamed for him, and some even burst into tears. They were originally Lockhart's fans, but Lockhart's repeated humiliations over the past few months disappointed them. Especially after the Battle of Quidditch, it became common knowledge that Lockhart was a liar.
When did Lockhart get so good?
Ron muttered to himself, his mouth hanging open, wondering if someone had used Polyjuice Potion to disguise themselves as Lockhart.
So who wants to come up and have a go now?
Seeing that no one was going on stage for a while, Lockhart spoke again.
I believe that you guys have accumulated a lot of conflicts. Now is a good opportunity to vent. You can choose who you want to challenge anyone.
As soon as Lockhart finished speaking, Malfoy jumped up from the stage.
Well done, Malfoy, you're the first one who's had the nerve to come up here. I can't believe you're a Slytherin.
Lockhart praised him. Malfoy's face darkened, and he said arrogantly,
I don't want to be sorted into that stupid house. I'd rather drop out and go home than go somewhere like that.
The young lions were furious, but Malfoy didn't care. His eyes were fixed on Ivan, and his mind was filled with memories of his defeat at Ivan's hands during their school years.
Hug.
Malfoy was about to call Ivan up for a duel when he remembered that Ivan had knocked out a dozen Slytherins on the Quidditch pitch.
Harry Potter.
Chapter 213, Key.
Potter, get on.
Lockhart shouted, grabbing Harry by the hand and pulling him onto the stage.
Good, now face your opponents, Bo.
Lockhart glanced at the two of them. Harry looked more or less nervous, his wand gripped tightly in his right hand, while Malfoy was relatively relaxed, trying to think of a way to embarrass him. However, the two of them were extremely stubborn and had no intention of bowing.
Bo is like that, come, I'll teach you.
Lockhart patiently corrected Harry and Malfoy's irregular movements, forcing them to bow face to face, causing Harry and Malfoy to squirm. Lockhart then interfered with the dueling charm, using Malfoy to cast the disarming charm and Harry the shield charm to defend himself. Given that they were only in their second year, Lockhart personally showed them how to cast the spell.
Expelliarmus.
Lockhart pointed his wand forward, and a red beam of light shot from the tip of his wand into the distance. Lockhart turned to Malfoy.
You do this, Malfoy, see.
Malfoy was confused and was about to say something when Lockhart turned to Harry and instructed him on how to cast the shield charm.
Armor.
Lockhart pointed his wand at himself, and an illusory barrier of magic appeared around him.
Harry know how to release it. Armor.
Harry foolishly followed suit, pointing his wand at himself but to no avail.
Professor.
Harry looked anxiously at Lockhart, wanting him to teach him a few more times. Lockhart pointed his wand forward, and a red beam of light shot from the tip of his wand into the distance. Lockhart turned to Malfoy. "You do this, Malfoy, see." Malfoy was confused and was about to say something when Lockhart turned to Harry and instructed him on how to cast the shield charm. Armor. Lockhart pointed his wand at himself, and an illusory barrier of magic appeared around him. Harry know how to release it. Armor. Harry foolishly followed suit, pointing his wand at himself but to no avail. Professor.
I think there must be something wrong with Professor Lockhart. He must have used something else to do the spell.
Hermione, who had learned the shield charm in her youth, said suddenly, looking suspiciously at Lockhart, who was giving instructions blindly. Hermione turned back to Ivan, who was trying not to laugh.
Ivan, you must know something, don't you? No, I don't know anything.
Ivan shook his head quickly. He had been paid to keep his secret from Lockhart. However, Lockhart's antics left Ivan with no other choice. At this rate, Lockhart would soon be exposed again.
BREAKLAP. Tarantella dance.
The lights of the red and green charms collided in midair, then veered off to one side, creating an arc of light around Malfoy, who ducked to avoid the spell that was aimed at him and shouted again.
A blunder.
A flash of light exploded from the tip of Malfoy's wand, and a long black snake slithered out of the black mist and landed heavily on the floor of the dueling ground, its head held high and its forked tongue hissing.
I thought I told you to use the disarming charm, Malfoy.
Lockhart snapped, raising his wand to cast a countercurse that caused the snake to vanish. However, his charm went off again, and the snake, struck by it, rapidly expanded into a python.
Petrify.
Lockhart shouted, remembering he had another spell. Hit by the spell, the black python shuddered and struggled to shake off the debris on its body, looking extremely miserable.
Jesus, Harry, you're a Parselmouth, and you've been hiding it from us all this time.
Ron exclaimed as they made their way back to the dormitory.
Snake talk, what do you mean? You mean talk to snakes?
Harry asked blankly. He didn't understand why Ron was so excited, but he told him about his conversation with a snake from Brazil before he went to school.
I'm sure a lot of people at school can do that, right?
Harry said hopefully.
No, it's not a common skill.
Ron shook his head and told Harry that Parseltongue was almost synonymous with dark wizardry.
It's not as bad as it sounds. It's said that the founders of Hogwarts were able to speak the language of snakes.
Chapter 214. It's the first time I've seen a little wizard as difficult as you.
The founders who? Godric Gryffindor.
Harry asked hurriedly, desperate for any great man in history to share his skill.
It was Salazar Slytherin,
said Ivan, snuffing out Harry's hope.
That's terrible.
Harry wailed. Even though there are no rumors of Slytherin descendants opening the Chamber of Secrets at Hogwarts, Harry does not want to be associated with the legendary founder of Slytherin House. Ivan shook his head, ignoring Harry's complaints. In fact, if it weren't for the influence of Voldemort's Horcruxes, Parseltongue would have been a pretty good ability. At the very least, Ivan wanted it now.
By the way, Tom, do you recognize this?
The pages of the diary were broken up to form a series of words. Where did you see it?
I found this by accident. What's wrong, Tom? Is there something wrong with these characters?
Yvonne asked, omitting the process of acquiring them. Tom was silent for a while, and then, just when Ivan was beginning to get impatient and thought he wasn't going to speak, new writing appeared on the diary. This is the language of the serpents, or perhaps it is a text created by Salazar Slytherin based on the language of the serpents, which possesses strange powers.
Didn't you say it was written by Slytherin himself and that it had strange powers? Of course I want to learn.
Ivan replied casually, and then asked another question.
What about you, Tom? Why can you read snake?
Because in my body flows the blood of my ancestor, the great Salazar Slytherin, The language of serpents is not for the common man, but for those of special blood. The black ink on the blank page formed words, and even if they were just words, Ivan could feel Tom Riddle's pride and joy. Ivan, however, was not convinced by Tom's claims, as he knew Dumbledore to be able to speak snake, and the old headmaster was not a Slytherin. Ivan was confident that he could learn anything, no matter how difficult it was, so he did not give up and asked Tom to teach him again. Tom replied quickly this time. Yes, but I'm just a memory with no power to speak or teach you. Can you find a creature and kill it? I need this to cast spells such as your owl.
I'm sorry, but Marka is my best friend.
Ivan said firmly. Then other creatures will do.
Of course I believe you, Tom. But what you said about what seemed like dangerous dark magic frightened me, and
Ivan trailed off, looking deliberately timid.
Mum once told me that it's best not to believe in anything self-conscious.
Ivan, who knew all the tricks, knew that the best way to deal with an opponent's emotional card was to respond with another. As your best friend, I trust you, and you have to understand me.
Why don't I take you to Professor Dumbledore and ask him if he has any magic that can restore your powers?
Chapter 215, Don't be bewitched by your imitation.
See how?
Yvonne was stunned, and then she remembered the Horcrux that had sucked Harry into her memory. As expected, the next moment, the diary seemed to have been blown away by a strong gust of wind. The pages of the diary flipped to the first page, and the black ink gathered to form a single word.
Hello, Hals, nice to meet you. I'm Tom Riddle.
Ivan turned to see a handsome, dark-haired boy of 15 or 16, wearing Slytherin house robes with a shiny prefect badge on his chest.
Hello, Tom. I must say you're a lot more handsome than I thought you'd be.
Ivan teased, quickly collecting himself. She wondered how Tom managed to disfigure himself in the future.
Tom, what is this place, and why did you bring me here?
Ivan asked.
The one who made me place a spell on the diary so that I could meet you here.
Tom explained and then waved his hand, causing the pitch-black space to change. The rolling black fog kept surging, combining black and white to form a scene and a figure, and the monotonous world suddenly came alive as if someone had splashed multicolored paint on it.
It was a long story, and I grew up in an orphanage for muggles, and I never met my parents.
See how? Yvonne was stunned, and then she remembered the Horcrux that had sucked Harry into her memory. As expected, the next moment, the diary seemed to have been blown away by a strong gust of wind. The pages of the diary flipped to the first page, and the black ink gathered to form a single word.
It may be hard for you to imagine, but there were also disputes in that tiny orphanage.
See how? Yvonne was stunned, and then she remembered the Horcrux that had sucked Harry into her memory. As expected, the next moment, the diary seemed to have been blown away by a strong gust of wind. The pages of the diary flipped to the first page, and the black ink gathered to form a single word.
See, I saved his life once, and that's what he did to me.
Tom, who was standing next to Ivan, laughed mockingly.
That little fat boy is so mean.
Ivan tried to sound like a child.
Your dean is such a nice man.
He's nice, good to me, you're sure.
Tom Riddle's smile grew wider, and then his face darkened as he murmured.
Don't be fooled by the image.
Chapter 216, The Strong Can Submit to the Weak. Yvonne frowned, not sure what Tom meant.
Did you know that the head of the orphanage was actually afraid of me? He thought he was hiding it well.
Tom laughed.
At first, I was also fooled by them. Later on, I found out that they were trying their best to promote me and only wanted to chase me away.
Tom seemed to be holding something back, reaching the breaking point.
What happened to the little fat boy?
Ivan asked suddenly.
He was taken in by the couple because he was the only one who knew how to please them, other than me.
Tom sneered.
Anyway, after what I've been through, I realized that what I did was wrong.
Tom began again. On the screen, the story continues. Ivan could see that the dark-haired boy was using his special powers to get back at everyone who had bullied him. Such as stealing their favorite things, hogging all the tasty treats, and so on.
And so it went on until I was 11 years old.
Tom Riddle, lost in thought and memories, waved his hand to recreate the scene. At the orphanage, the 11-year-old Tom adapted to living alone. There were still people who whispered about him and spoke ill of him, and even if Tom Jr. tried to get back at him, it would not change the situation. More worrying to little Tom was the fact that the head of the orphanage and its staff would often invite psychiatrists to examine him.
He's your current headmistress, Albus Dumbledore.
Tom murmured through the flames. It was also Ivan's first time seeing Dumbledore at such a young age, looking to be no more than middle-aged, with a russet beard and a firm, decisive manner. After discovering that little Tom's cupboard was full of booty taken from other children, the younger Dumbledore forced little Tom to return everything and apologize to everyone there. At this point, Tom suddenly smiled sarcastically.
Yes, I must apologize for them, for every child there, for the head of house, for the staff.
Just because I, Tom Riddle, caused them a lot of trouble.
Tom said wryly.
When did the head of house and his staff, the children who had ostracized him, apologize to him? Who had interfered then? Tom paused for a moment, then continued with feeling.
Of course, I do not hate him.
Yvonne was silent for a long time, looking at Tom, who was calm but slightly deranged. He had seen it all from Dumbledore's point of view in his previous life, and now that he was in Tom's place, he felt something entirely different. Perhaps Tom had the choice to hide something, but Ivan was impressed that Tom, of all the scenes and ages he could remember, never cried once. Even when he was ostracized and targeted, he calmly considered his revenge plan. When they realized that they were different from others, they actively trained their extraordinary abilities. It was for this reason that the young Tom was able to keep the children of the orphanage in line, so that even the head of house and his staff, who were adults, did not dare to interfere. In contrast, Harry's childhood was much weaker, when he was bullied by a group of mischievous children, and he never actively inspired or honed his skills.
Afterwards, I attended Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry and entered Slytherin.
Unaware of Ivan's thoughts, Tom Riddle continued to tell his story. Under Dumbledore's guidance, the young Tom began his education at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and was soon able to show signs of magical talent, as he was handsome and well-behaved. Even the headmaster of Hogwarts, Armando Dippet, favored him.
Except for Albus Dumbledore, he has always been deeply prejudiced against me and will never approve of me, no matter what I do.
Tom looked gloomy. While in the Black Mist dimension, Ivan was shown about his academic career at Hogwarts and was awarded the House Cup almost every year. Even so, Dumbledore is extremely wary of him.
Tom, you were well liked by most people at the time. Wasn't that enough?
Ivan asked, puzzled by Tom's obsession with Dumbledore.
Of course it's not enough.
Tom repeated, shaking his head and looking grim.
Dumbledore is special. He was the one who led me into the wizarding world, and he was an extraordinary and powerful wizard.
Chapter 217, The Source of Dumbledore's Power.
And did you find that answer?
Yvonne asked curiously.
Yes.
Tom could not help but laugh as he continued.
That sounds like child's play, doesn't it? But I was young, and I believed in him. It was only when I followed in the footsteps of the great Seer Salazar Slytherin and unraveled the many clues left behind by our ancestors that I found this.
Tom snapped his fingers, and a black mist swirled in the air and gathered into the shape of a book. Ivan suppressed his excitement and forced himself to calm down. The cover and name of the book were extremely familiar to him. It was The Bloodline Origin.
This book reveals everything that Albus Dumbledore is hiding. It also shows me the truth about the wizarding world.
Tom exclaimed, not noticing Ivan's expression.
What does the book say? Why is it called Bloodline Origin?
Yvonne asks, knowing full well that she is trying to get more information out of him. Tom glanced at him, then began introducing Ivan to the book, beginning with the history of the pre-war period. The emphasis is on this ancient history, in which a number of wizards and witches used various means to steal the innate powers of powerful creatures, including the Dumbledore family, which fused phoenix blood.
You've seen Dumbledore's phoenix, haven't you?
Tom turned to Ivan.
Yes, it looks beautiful and powerful.
Ivan nodded.
That's proof.
Tom said, raising his eyebrows and looking ferocious.
My Slytherin blood was powerful, but my father was an inferior muggle, and he defiled the blood of my ancestors, preventing me from gaining full blood power.
Tom clenched his fists, and the black mist around him stirred. However, this only lasted for a short while before Tom became calm again.
Anyway, I found a way to restore the bloodline to its original form in The Origin of Blood, but the book was incomplete, and the most crucial parts were deliberately torn out, causing me a lot of trouble.
And did you find that answer? Yvonne asked curiously. Yes.
So the kind headmaster in your eyes may not be what you think he is.
And did you find that answer? Yvonne asked curiously. Yes.
You and I are very alike, Hales. We are both extremely gifted young wizards, and sooner or later Dumbledore will come after you too.
Ivan gave a non-committal nod, but did not reply. Tom didn't care.
I've put that book in the restricted section. You can go there at midnight tonight and look for it. I set up some interesting little enchantments there to prevent the book from falling into the hands of the mediocre. I'm sure that won't be a problem for you.
Tom's voice grew weaker, as if he were exhausted. Ivan had a strange look on his face, as he had already got his hands on the origin of blood, but he was not stupid enough to say so. Most of what Tom Riddle said was within Ivan's expectations, as he had suspected that Tom might have hidden the book in the restricted section, and that it was related to Salazar Slytherin.
Tom, are you all right?
Yvonne's inquiry was quickly answered, and the diary's dark ink appeared. It's not good. I've used up too much energy trying to tell you these things. I'm afraid I won't be able to talk to you for a while. Anyway, let's talk after you get the book.
That bad, surely not.
Chapter 218. Everyone thinks I'm a master magician. Ivan sighed, just in case he would have to move Tom somewhere else. Although he once created the cover of a diary to limit Tom Riddle's powers from spilling over, it was apparently not time to use it yet. Tom Riddle was very clever indeed. Ivan was certain that if he dared to do so, Tom would definitely sense that something was wrong and their relationship would worsen. He still had many questions that needed to be answered, so now was not the time to fall out completely.
Odd, when did Tom become so forward?
Yvonne rubbed her chin. Tom had revealed a lot during this exchange. He had even revealed a portion of his childhood memories, which was unlike him. Ivan didn't know it, but after 2 months of being locked up, Tom Riddle was desperate to show his worth, for fear of being forgotten somewhere again.
Or did it only increase by 10%?
Yvonne was surprised to see that the mission was only a quarter of the way through. Tom Riddle seemed to be talking a lot, but there wasn't a lot about the mission, and it was hard to tell if he was telling the truth or not.
Ivan, are you still going to the dueling club next Friday night?
Yvonne was taken aback but quickly realized what they were talking about and became suspicious.
A dueling club? Is Professor Lockhart planning on having a second term?
Ivan couldn't help but find this strange. If he remembered correctly, Lockhart's dueling club had only been held once in the original timeline before it was pulled out. Could it be that Lockhart's decision to hold the dueling club was due to him not only not making a fool of himself yesterday, but also being in the limelight?
I think the dueling club is pretty good. It's a lot more fun than lessons.
Ron said casually. Ivan smiled but said nothing. He was not surprised that the dueling club was so popular. After all, Hogwarts wizards and witches went to great lengths to learn all kinds of jinxes and defensive magic at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Lockhart's dueling club solved the problem perfectly, so how could it not be popular? Hermione then added enthusiastically.
I heard that Professor Lockhart invited Professor Flitwick and Professor Sprout to attend the lesson, and of course.
Yvonne asked curiously, wondering why Lockhart hadn't invited Professor McGonagall when he had invited all 3 heads of house. Lockhart was going to teach Gryffindor himself.
It's what you want.
Ivan did not take it at once but looked around. Lockhart's office was very different from the last time he was there. The full-length mirror in the corner had been replaced with a different style, and all the pictures had been removed. On the slightly cluttered table were letters from fans and a large number of autobiographical books, as well as several textbooks such as Standard Book of Spells and Magical Theory.
I thought you were either too busy writing back to your fans or trying to make a name for yourself. I didn't expect you to read some books.
Ivan said, surprised.
I can't help it. A true master of magic can't do nothing.
Lockhart shrugged. Ivan didn't reply. He opened the bag of galleons on the table, waved his wand, and counted them. Ivan immediately turned to Lockhart.
There's 5,000 galleons in there, and an extra one that I hope you'll do me a favor.
Lockhart said earnestly, moving the bag of galleons towards Ivan.
On the evening of next Friday, I will hold the second dueling club. The heads of the other 3 houses will be there. And I, a true master of magic, cannot and should not only know 3 kinds of magic.
But you're not a master of magic, you're just a glorified liar.
Ivan mercilessly exposes Lockhart for what he really is.
Yes, I know.
Lockhart paced back and forth at his desk, excitement on his face as he muttered to himself.
Everyone's talking about it now. They think I'm the master of magic.
Chapter 219. It's fine, I have confidence in you.
I think you can help me, don't you?
Lockhart said, looking at Ivan expectantly.
You must have some sort of skill to get to this level so young.
Does talent and hard work count?
Yvonne asked hesitantly, raising her eyebrows. When he was making the 3 pieces of magical equipment for Lockhart, Ivan had predicted that Lockhart would fall deeply in love with them after adapting to the rapid improvement of his strength. This was also the trap he set to empty Lockhart's wallet.
Professor Lockhart, I'm sure you understand that there is no easy way to become a master of magic. I can't even make you a few magical tools to improve your strength in such a short time.
Ivan said, waving his hands to show that there was nothing he could do.
Then what should we do? I've arranged with the heads of house to show the Hogwarts students what a real duel is like at the dueling club next week.
Lockhart exclaimed in a panic. Ivan rolled his eyes when he heard this. Dueling the 3 deans, you need my help when you're so capable and courageous. Professor Flitwick was a dueling champion, Snape's fighting prowess was top-notch, and Professor Sprout was perhaps slightly weaker than either of them. However, Professor Sprout was qualified to be the head of house, and even if Lockhart used a magical tool, he would still be beaten.
I told you to keep a low profile.
Ivan protested.
It wasn't exactly my idea this time.
Lockhart was frustrated. He didn't want to say yes, but there were too many people around and he couldn't bring himself to refuse. Lockhart looked troubled for a moment, but then he seemed to have thought of something. He stared at Ivan for a long moment before speaking again.
Why don't you take my place? The Polyjuice potion takes at least a month to brew.
Ivan snapped, rolling his eyes. He knew exactly what Lockhart was planning.
Another 1,000 galleons, that's all I have left.
Lockhart gritted his teeth. Ivan hesitated, but seeing that he had crossed Lockhart's line, he agreed.
In that case, it's not impossible for me to replace you.
It was rare to have a legitimate reason to cross swords with several professors at Hogwarts, and Ivan would have considered accepting the offer if not for the galleons.
But didn't you just say it would take a month to brew the Polyjuice potion?
Lockhart asked, wondering if Ivan would find another way to help him.
You always have to keep something handy like Polyjuice potion in reserve.
Ivan explained. He had brewed a large pot of Polyjuice potion during his last mission to explore Hogwarts, but he had only used it once because he had learned how to use the animagus. Lockhart's mouth twitched.
So his 1,000 galleons were wasted.
Lockhart's heart went out to her. He didn't earn his money through the wind, he earned it through hard work on his books. He used memory charms to collect good story material, and he risked being beaten to death.
By the way, Professor Lockhart, I can't guarantee that I'll win.
Ivan tried to take precautions. Ivan knew exactly how strong he was. Without the help of blood magic and props, he would at most be on par with an ordinary adult wizard. There was a clear gap between him and the professors.
Don't worry, just don't go easy on them. I have faith in you.
Lockhart said confidently, patting Ivan on the shoulder. He had personally experienced Ivan's strength. He had seen many famous wizards who could not use such powerful magic. Ivan had a strange expression on his face. and he opened his mouth to explain why Lockhart had such high hopes for him. However, Ivan had no choice but to keep his mouth shut when he remembered that he needed this strength to deter Lockhart. Ivan left Lockhart's office with a headache and wondered if he had been too good at pretending in front of Lockhart lately. To the extent that Lockhart believed he was a powerful wizard who could
Keep his hands free.
against the three deans, Flitwick, Snape, and Sprout.
I'm not Dumbledore.
Ivan sighed, heading for the room of requirement as usual. Ivan's face fell as he reached the door. On the wall in front of the room of requirement, there was a small, inconspicuous stain, but Ivan, who had been there many times, could clearly see the difference.
Someone's been here.
Chapter 220, Chamber of Secrets and Snake Language. Unfortunately, the jar was only so big, and it didn't take long for it to be filled with black mist. With nowhere to run, the jar's spider was soon eaten away by the black mist, and when everything returned to normal, the jar was nothing but a dried husk.
Tom, are you all right?
Ivan asked, looking at Tom in his Slytherin robes.
Thank you for your trust, Hales. I've managed to regain some of my energy, which is why I was able to see you again.
Tom Riddle smiled, then paused before speaking again.
Well, did you get the book? The magic I left behind didn't give you any trouble, did it? An obfuscation spell and an unknown spell to hide something, right? It did take me a while.
Ivan said resentfully. He couldn't help but think back to his first year of school, when he was instructed by the system to search for the origin of blood, and how long he would have had to search for it if he hadn't been so lucky as to stumble across a dark book and break Tom's confounding charm.
You're faster than I thought. I thought it would take you at least 2 or 3 days to break my spell.
Tom was surprised. He had set up the confounding charm very cleverly. Most people would have stood there with their eyes wide open, looking for it, but they would not have found anything amiss. Tom even considered the possibility that Ivan would not be able to crack the spell and would come back for help. To Tom's surprise, Ivan managed to crack it in less than a day, which made him even more wary of the young wizard in front of him.
I've already read that book. The most crucial part of it, like you said, was torn out, and it turned out to be a boring history book.
Ivan shook his head regretfully.
As I said before, it was the doing of your headmaster, Dumbledore.
Tom's lips curled up slightly, then he continued to reassure her.
But you don't have to worry. When I was at school, I spent a lot of time trying to fill in most of the gaps and put this information in a secret room. I just needed the language of the snakes to open it.
Ivan rolled his eyes. He didn't trust Tom to be kind. Trying to lure him to the Chamber of Secrets was more like it. He knew very well that there was only one basilisk in that secret room, and if he entered recklessly with a Horcrux, he would not end up well. Even as Ivan thought this, he noticed that the mission progress for the Bloodline mystery had increased to 30% when Tom Riddle mentioned the Chamber of Secrets. Ivan was stunned. This meant that the Chamber of Secrets most likely contained a way to fuse multiple bloodlines, or at the very least, some clue as to how to do so.
What is it, Harles?
Tom Riddle asked suspiciously.
Nothing. I'm just wondering why there's a Chamber of Secrets at Hogwarts that needs to be opened in Parseltongue. Did you do this on purpose, Tom?
Ivan asked, changing the subject.
Of course I didn't do it. I don't have the skill to open a Chamber of Secrets at Hogwarts.
Tom explained, shaking his head.
That's Salazar Slytherin, a place that was created to experiment and study the merging of bloodlines.
Yvonne automatically assumed that Tom was trying to fool her, but she soon realized the possibility. If the origin of blood was really written by Salazar Slytherin, then Slytherin must have been well versed in the subject and most likely studied it. It is not unusual for a research facility to be set up, and it is possible that the basilisk that was placed in the Chamber of Secrets was either the guardian of the facility or an object of study. The Forbidden Forest was home to countless rare and magical creatures. Could they be kept there for research purposes? Various conjectures passed through Ivan's mind.
Anyway, I put everything in the Chamber of Secrets. It's perfectly safe, and even Dumbledore can't find it. All he has to do is use the language of snakes to open it.
Then you'll teach me the language, won't you? Tom, we're best friends.
Yvonne exclaimed hopefully.
Of course I'm willing to teach you. but not everyone can master the language of snakes.
Tom Riddle replied haughtily. Tom Riddle was about to say that taking him inside would solve this problem, but Ivan interrupted.
Is snake language really that hard? I might be able to learn it.
Tom Riddle frowned, and seeing Ivan's determination, he knew that Ivan would not give up until he tried. He had to be patient and teach her a few times. SSSS. As Tom spoke the language, Ivan decisively entered the learning acceleration mode of the experience card, vaguely aware that the language seemed to contain magic, vibrating at a strange frequency that affected the entire black fog space. Ivan had an idea and understood why the language was so difficult to learn. He tried to remember what he had just sensed and tried to imitate it. The system prompt in his mind sounded.
Well, do you need me to teach you again?
Chapter 221, Our Plastic Friendship Breaks Today. How was this possible? Tom Riddle was caught in a state of shock and confusion, as it seemed to him that the language of the serpents was a gift given to him by his blood, one that no one else could master. Ivan was still trying to adjust his voice to match Tom's earlier voice, but it soon began to resemble his own.
What do you think, Tom? Do I have good pronunciation?
Ivan asked Tom after a few tries. Tom was still in a daze, and it took him a while to regain his composure. He looked at Ivan with a mixture of emotions in his eyes.
You're quite right.
Ivan was relieved. He had been worried that there was more to the language than met the eye, and now Tom confirmed it. Ivan then changed the subject.
Tom, what did you mean when you taught me the language? That means death.
Tom Riddle explained, then thought better of it and asked.
Hads, have you ever been exposed to snake language before? Who are your parents? Has he ever tried to talk to a snake?
Tom Riddle found it hard to believe that Yvonne could speak the language, and she was learning it so fast. He only demonstrated it a few times.
What's the matter?
Yvonne asked. She was trying to fill in the gaps in her snakespeak and was surprised when Tom suddenly stopped speaking.
That's enough for today. I'm still too weak to keep this up forever.
Tom said with a sigh, withdrawing all the black mist and returning to the diary. He needed some time to think.
Then we'll learn it tomorrow.
Ivan nodded but did not force Tom Riddle.
By the way, you still haven't told me where the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets is. Are there any traps or booby traps? Are there any other dangers? Why don't I take you with me when I learn how to speak snake and enter the chamber?
Tom Riddle, who was about to return to his Horcrux, stopped and stared at Ivan, remembering that he had another card to play, other than the language of snakes. Tom Riddle's hopes were rekindled. However, Tom had a vague feeling that something was wrong, but he couldn't figure it out. He just felt that the young wizard in front of him seemed to have spoken too coincidentally.
All right, I'll teach you tomorrow.
Chapter 222, Tom Riddle, I've been trying so hard, yet you treat me like this. When Ivan did not reply for a long time, Tom Riddle realized that Ivan intended to break their previous agreement and questioned him angrily. Why? Ivan sighed and silently picked up his quill and wrote in his diary. Tom, you've always been a good man, so will you help me one last time? Tell me, where exactly did you put that information? I'll get it myself. Ivan asked the question sincerely. They were all friends, and Ivan did not want to use drastic means to get the information he wanted. Tom Riddle was momentarily furious, but more than that, he was confused. Words quickly appeared on the white paper and filled the page. You don't trust me? Why? I taught you all kinds of magic with all my heart.
Mindful, but there are at least 29 things you've told me about magic that go wrong.
Yvonne retorted, not bothering to argue with Tom Riddle. Tom Riddle was stunned. He had not expected Ivan to know all of his little tricks and was momentarily embarrassed. Perhaps believing this was why Ivan distrusted him, Tom was quick to explain. Hales, you're mistaken. I'm just a 16-year-old student. It's normal to miss something. I have no intention of deceiving you.
Really, that memory needs to be restored. I saw it very clearly when you devoured the spider's flesh and soul.
Ivan said sarcastically, mercilessly tearing Tom's disguise apart, and then spoke again.
You never told me the truth, did you, Tom? And I certainly had no reason to believe you. I also know very well that you have never considered me a friend.
Mindful, but there are at least 29 things you've told me about magic that go wrong, Yvonne retorted, not bothering to argue with Tom Riddle. Tom Riddle was stunned. He had not expected Ivan to know all of his little tricks and was momentarily embarrassed. Perhaps believing this was why Ivan distrusted him, Tom was quick to explain. Hales, you're mistaken. I'm just a 16-year-old student. It's normal to miss something. I have no intention of deceiving you. Really, that memory needs to be restored. I saw it very clearly when you devoured the spider's flesh and soul.
Don't ever say that, Tom. I'm just a young wizard in my second year. Don't try to slander me.
Ivan said sheepishly, looking at the words on the diary. Tom Riddle fell completely silent when Ivan uttered the words.
Dementor.
He did not expect Ivan to know this. Tom Riddle had a vague feeling that events were moving beyond his control.
I repeat, tell me, where exactly did you put that information? Or where in the Chamber of Secrets is Slytherin's research room, and how does one open it? I don't have the patience, Tom.
Ivan threatened, pointing his wand at the Horcrux. You think you can hurt me, with all the magic you've learned. The diary's ink was once again revealed, and its words were full of sarcasm. Then, endless black mist spewed out of the diary and swept towards Ivan.
Fierce fire.
Tom Riddle's horrified voice came from inside the diary. There were not many things in the wizarding world that could destroy a Horcrux, and fire was one of them.
Yes, the fire.
Ivan nodded. He had gone to great lengths to get the ring from Alicia in order to destroy the Horcrux.
You will only have one chance to speak.
Ivan said coldly, and leaned the fire hovering at the tip of his wand towards the Horcrux.
You'll never get what you want without my help.
The diary trembled and words appeared on the open pages.
The Chamber of Secrets is only so big. Who are you trying to fool? I'll go through it all.
Chapter 223, You're a Good Man, Tom. I kindly gave you the ability to insulate the usage of magical runes, and you're using it against me. Tom was devastated. He had not expected this bastard Ivan Howells to use his knowledge against him.
That's why I always said you were a good person, Tom. It's a pity you didn't want to be better.
That's why I always said you were a good person, Tom. It's a pity you didn't want to be better, Ivan said sincerely as he handed Tom Riddle a nice guy card and put the cover on. In the meantime, just in case, Ivan opened the system to check the status of the Horcrux. Magical item, the Diary of Tom Marvolo Riddle. Magic strong. Special state, magic isolation. Description, this is a Horcrux created by Tom Marvolo Riddle when he was 16 years old. The Horcrux's outer layer is composed of an insulating magical sequence that makes it safe to use without being opened. Ivan was relieved to see the system's instructions. He had been worried that the diary would be too powerful and cause the insulating runes to fail, which would render the hard-crafted seal he had created to restrain the Horcruxes useless. Fortunately, the effect was just as he had expected.
What's a basilisk's worst fear? The sound of a rooster.
Ivan vaguely recalled the information mentioned in the book. It seemed that he would have to go to Hagrid and steal a few chickens just in case. It was not impossible to transfigure a few with a transfiguration charm, but Ivan did not know if that cry would work.
Ivan, why do you have so many owls?
Harry asked suspiciously.
To deliver letters, you know. I've been getting a lot of letters from fans lately, so I'm borrowing some owls for the time being.
Ivan bluffed.
I feel like you're catching up to Lockhart.
Ron shook his head and then looked at the group of owls on the ground.
By the way, why do all your owls look so weird? They just arrived today, so they probably haven't adapted to school life yet.
Ivan also noticed that this was a little strange, so he quickly made a cage and locked the owls inside to prevent them from running around. At the same time, Hagrid, who had returned from his usual inspection of the Forbidden Forest, returned to his hut. When he saw the empty chicken coop with only a few feathers left, his smile froze and he roared angrily.
Where are my chickens?
Saturday evening. Keeping out of sight, Ivan stepped into the disused girl's bathroom, where he was accompanied by two grotesque owls perched on his shoulders. In the middle of the girl's bathroom was a circular sink made up of a large number of wash basins. Ivan found a snake-shaped mark on the copper tap of one of the basins. Upon closer inspection, Ivan saw that the snake-shaped carvings also contained smaller characters, densely packed together like snake scales. Having learned so much from Tom Riddle, Ivan was well aware that these tiny characters were Salazar Slytherin's words based on the language of snakes, which may be why the mechanism was opened by the language.
What are you doing here? Nobody usually comes here.
A voice suddenly spoke beside Ivan. Ivan turned to see a ghost wearing Ravenclaw clothes and thick glasses floating towards him.
Are you looking for something here?
Myrtle's ethereal form floated past Ivan, examining him curiously. Yvonne frowned and was about to explain when Myrtle's face changed and she shrieked.
Or are you here to mock me like thems?
Yvonne stopped mid-sentence and went along with Myrtle.
Yes, that's it. I heard a legend that there was a fat, ugly, pimply, sniveling soul here, and I came to see it out of curiosity.
So you see it now, you think I'm what they say I am.
Myrtle sobbed, but she kept her eyes on Ivan, desperately hoping that the good-looking boy in front of her would say something different.
Now I think.
Ivan glanced at Myrtle and nodded in confirmation.
They're right.
Get out of here, I don't want to see you again.
Myrtle covered her face and screamed as she rushed into the innermost cubicle and hid in the toilet bowl there. One could vaguely hear her crying. Ivan shook his head, apologized to himself, and turned back to the sink. While Myrtle was crying in the cubicle, Ivan looked at the snake on the copper dragon's head and said something in snake language.
Hiss open.
Chapter 224, Entering the Chamber of Secrets and the Hungry Basilisk.
Expecto Patronus.
Ivan said, waving his wand. Wisps of white mist poured out from the tip of the wand and transformed into an illusory, pure white unicorn. After happily clopping around for a while, it plunged into the deep pipe.
Clean it up.
Ivan did a quick cleanup with the dust-removing charm and looked around. It was a wide, straight tunnel with a wet floor and the faint sound of running water. Ivan hurried on, passing through the tunnel in the glow of darkness and patronus, and was surprised when he did not see a shed basilisk. However, on second thought, the basilisk had not been released yet, so how could it have shed its skin?
HSSS open.
Ivan said again, and the two snake shadows on the door seemed to come alive, and they moved quickly, the stone wall opening up in the middle. Ivan entered a vast space with many towering stone columns, upon which were carved serpents, coiled like guards. Directly in front of them was a wide platform with a statue at the end that reached to the ceiling. It was a statue of Salazar Slytherin, and Ivan had to look up to see the statue's huge face where the basilisk slept. Ivan didn't want to disturb her, so he began to search the Chamber of Secrets, tentatively reading the words aloud from each stone pillar engraved with a serpent. Salute the great forerunner, Salazar Slytherin. The strange snake language echoed throughout the chamber, but none of the serpent pillars responded, and Ivan was determined to find more clues. It took several hours, but eventually, somewhere, they found Slytherin's writings, a series of strange characters that translated into one sentence. Come to my statue, speak to me, and pay your highest respects. Remember, close your eyes. At the same time, there was a strange picture next to the strange characters. It was a figure standing in the middle of the platform, its mouth open as if it were mumbling something. In front of it, a huge snake was emerging from the statue's mouth. Ivan frowned. If he hadn't known this was Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets, he would have thought it was an evil wizard's doing. He did not come here to summon a basilisk. He did not want to provoke a snake that could kill with its eyes if it did not have to. Throughout the afternoon, however, Ivan was unable to locate Slytherin's research lab. Remembering Tom Riddle's earlier words, Ivan became eager. Perhaps he should call the basilisk out for questioning. This horrible thought occurred to Ivan, and he knew that it was a bad idea. He could not be sure how strong the basilisk was, or if he would be able to defeat it if he made a mistake. Ivan, however, was more reluctant to go back to wrangling with Tom, which went on forever. Ivan did not even dare to bring Tom Riddle into the Chamber of Secrets, lest he set up some sort of trap. When the room of requirement is in danger of being discovered, the dormitory is the only place that is relatively safe.
Hiss, 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 speak to me, Slytherin, the greatest of the Hogwarts Big Four.
Above, as Ivan watched, Slytherin's great stone face moved, and his mouth opened wider and wider, revealing a large, round hole large enough for a man to easily walk through. Yvonne quickly closed her eyes, lest she make direct eye contact with the snake monster. Fortunately, Ivan was able to see through the unicorn's shadow when he closed his eyes, though he was unsure if what he saw through magic would affect him. If his memory served him right, the basilisk's dying effects did not work on everything. Phoenixes, also considered to be top-of-the-line magical creatures, were immune to them, and their dying effects were weakened by mirror and surface reflections, which in turn petrified the target. While thinking about it, vaguely, Ivan heard a rustling sound from above, as if something were slipping out of the statue's mouth. The two owls Ivan brought with him lay on the ground, shivering and making cooing noises. Ivan was on his guard. If he failed to communicate with the creature in the language of snakes, he was prepared to turn the two roosters back into their true forms.
Hiss, 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 hungry, so hungry.
Chapter 225, Slytherin's Laboratory. Ivan felt his body grow cold at the sight of the basilisk's bulb-sized eyes. Fortunately, it showed no signs of petrification, and the Bloodline magic unicorn's shadow was unaffected. This confirmed his earlier suspicions.
SSSS, hungry.
Before Ivan could reply, the basilisk opened its mouth wide and tore the two owls apart, swallowing them whole. Ivan, who had witnessed everything through his Patronus, winced. The rooster he had come to deal with the basilisk was dead.
Yes, this is the present I brought you.
Ivan added.
Wait.
The basilisk ignored Ivan's words and coiled its huge body around him, spinning restlessly, its bulb-sized eyes fixed on him and its tongue flicking out to test his scent. Ivan tensed again. At the same time, Ivan was frustrated. Why did this basilisk act like a foodie? Was it always like this when it was summoned? Then how did Tom Riddle feed the other party after opening the Chamber of Secrets so many times? Ivan was worried that the basilisk would be so hungry that it would consider attacking him, and he thought of the information he had found in the restricted section before coming to the Chamber of Secrets. It shows that basilisk recipes are varied, with mammals, birds, reptiles, and insects eating almost anything, but the favorite food is spiders.
You tell me where it is. Next time I come, I'll take you to eat an acromantula.
A tide.
The basilisk whispered, flicking its tongue. It didn't know what an acromantula was, but from Ivan's expression, it was a very large spider, which should satisfy its appetite. This particular term reminded the basilisk of the last time it woke up, when it smelled something in the castle that it was sure must be a delicious spider. Unfortunately, shortly after, the man who had driven it forcibly ordered it to sleep.
It's a very special kind of spider. It's very large, and I'm sure you'll like it. As for now, you should take me to your master's study. Right.
The basilisk whispered, weighing the pros and cons before suddenly turning around and meandering back in the direction it came from, as if trying to return to its nest. Ivan wondered why he had suddenly fled. Ivan, however, soon thought of another possibility and grabbed the basilisk by the tail, forcing it to carry him up. The basilisk allowed Ivan to enter through the statue's gaping mouth and glide down the passage. Ivan, lying on the basilisk's tail, followed the basilisk into the statue, the unicorn's shadow surrounding him, illuminating the surroundings.
Hail to the great forerunner, Salazar Slytherin.
Ivan tried to read the key the system had given him. Rumble. The two stone guards sprang into action, drawing back their weapons and pulling the doors open. They then lowered themselves to their knees as if they were servants greeting their master. Ivan grumbled about Salazar Slytherin's penchant for convoluted rituals.
Toms, you really are a liar.
Ivan said through gritted teeth. He was pretty sure that this was the missing page from Bloodline Origin. Tom had been trying to trick him into believing that Dumbledore had stolen it. And on these missing pages, just as Ivan had originally expected, was recorded the method to fuse bloodlines, which was the bloodline fusion potion formula rewarded by the school year system.
As I suspected, I was right.
Chapter 226, Bloodline Mystery and Fusion Limit. If not, Ivan can hardly imagine how Tom found the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets. The entrance to the Chamber of Secrets was located in the girls' bathroom, which was used regularly until Myrtle's death. Without proper guidance, Tom Riddle had no reason to sneak into the girls' bathroom and find the snake carved into the copper dragon's head. Unless he had a penchant for peeping into girls' toilets.
Bloodline mystery.
Progress updated.
I can't believe that's what happened.
Ivan muttered to himself, feeling a pang of fear. He did not know that there was such a thing when he fused with the blood of a unicorn, so he blindly performed the first blood fusion without confirming the level of compatibility. Yvonne marveled at her good fortune at having been able to pull this off. The unicorn she had chosen seemed to fit her perfectly. After reading the parchment, Ivan's curiosity was piqued. He pulled out a dusty chair, cleaned it, and sat at the table to examine the rest of the parchment. It is unknown if some special magic was placed on them, but they were able to make out the general contents of the writings over the millennia. Most of them recorded the development of the Bloodline fusion potion, and there were dozens of proposals on the parchment table. Each was tested with a special potion ingredient as the core. Despite the few failed summaries at the end, Ivan can only imagine the effort Salazar Slytherin must have put into learning these lessons. 5 of these dozens of proposals were approved by Slytherin. However, most of the recipes were for one creature, and only the last one, which used hemolytic grass as the core, was suitable for all magical creatures.
Phew.
Ivan muttered, exhaling.
Is that what precursors mean?
Ivan finally understood why Salazar Slytherin claimed to be a great pioneer. Slytherin may not have been the first wizard or witch to study blood integration, but it is likely that he was the most thoroughly researched wizard or witch of his time. Crucially, Salazar Slytherin's ambition went beyond that, after creating a merge potion that could fuse all bloodlines. The remainder of the parchment was devoted to a different subject, the method of merging various bloodlines. Some potions have even been modified, but they have never been able to solve the conflict caused by the integration of multiple bloodlines. As a result, Salazar Slytherin used the sheepskin scroll to remind his heirs not to try anything unless they had a solution to the conflict. Slytherin also made a wild guess based on previous merge experiments. Even if a wizard could fuse multiple bloodlines, there was bound to be an upper limit. And this maximum limit was most likely. Progress updated.
HSSS, a tide spider.
The basilisk dragged its massive body around Ivan, hissing as it circled him.
Hiss now, show me out.
Chapter 227, The Witnessing Owl. The basilisk hesitated, then leaned down, and Ivan jumped on top of it, grabbing the bulge on top of its head to steady himself. The basilisk seemed to have got used to this as it led Ivan away from the statue, down the hall of the Chamber of Secrets, through the maze of pipes, and back the way Ivan had come. Ivan stayed on top of the basilisk's head as they passed through the length of pipe again, feeling more comfortable than when they had arrived. Yvonne learned from her research that, in addition to being used as a pet by Salazar Slytherin, basilisks were often used as a means of transportation and lifts. After all, the statue at the entrance of the research lab was too tall and the pipe was too long. Only a snake monster could come and go as it pleased. More importantly, standing on the head of the basilisk and moving back and forth was more
Open.
in serpentine, and soon Ivan could see the light above them growing larger and larger, and a faint vibration coming from above. In the bathroom, the large number of wash basins that made up the circular sink began to move again, revealing the circular pipes underneath. A large, flat snake's head emerged from the hole, followed by a small half of the snake's body. Its dark yellow bulb-sized eyes surveyed the familiar yet strange surroundings. Ivan jumped off the basilisk's head, then turned around with his eyes closed and spoke to the basilisk.
Hiss, go back to where you belong. HSSS, leading.
The basilisk looked at him hesitantly, then slowly turned around and slithered back through the tube.
What's wrong?
Yvonne asked, looking puzzled and vaguely worried. Harry and Ron didn't reply but eagerly dragged him away. Ivan didn't resist, and when the door opened and they reached the dormitory, Ivan realized why they were in such a hurry. Ivan could see that the room was a mess, with books and clothes strewn all over the floor. Somehow, his strange-looking owls had escaped from their cage, and his terrified Malka was hiding behind a pillar near his bed. Ivan stared at an open suitcase with a sour expression. He was worried that he would not be able to find any clues in the Chamber of Secrets, so he spared Tom's life. On his way to the Chamber of Secrets, he sealed the Horcrux in his suitcase and stuffed it under his bed. So the intruder was undoubtedly after the Horcrux. Yvonne hurried over to inspect the diary, but it was nowhere to be found. She was baffled, wondering who could possibly have thought of owning a Horcrux. No one but Malfoy Sr. should know that he had it. He also kept the Horcruxes close to him most of the time and kept them safe the rest of the time. Tom Riddle never had a chance to seduce anyone. Ivan, thinking of the possible thief of Horcruxes, suddenly turned his head and stared fiercely at the chubby mouse lying by the window. Scabbers was leisurely nibbling on a flavorful bean. Even though the dormitory was in a mess, he acted as if it was none of his business. However, when Ivan fixed his gaze on Scabbers, Scabbers felt a chill run down his spine, and even the many flavor beans in his hand were no longer fragrant. Scabbers jumped into Ron's arms as fast as he could, and then crawled into Ron's pocket, shivering. Ivan looked away. The fact that Scabbers had the nerve to stay here suggested that he had nothing to do with the Horcruxes.
Ivan, is something important missing?
Harry asked when he noticed Ivan's odd expression.
It's just a notebook for taking notes. It's black, so it's nothing important.
Ivan hesitated. Ivan did not want to involve Harry and Ron, so he described the Horcrux and asked if they had seen it. Harry and Ron both shook their heads.
Where were you before? Did you see who did it?
Ivan asked again, suppressing his anxiety.
Ron and I stayed in the break room all afternoon to get rid of the wizard's flag, and when we came in, it was like this. We checked our things and didn't lose anything, so we came out to find you and Neville.
Harry explained.
Who the hell would go to all this trouble to steal a useless book?
Ron demanded angrily as he tried to calm Scabbers' agitated state. Ivan frowned. This was going to be troublesome. He couldn't think who would want the Horcrux. There were no witnesses except Scabbers, and as Ivan was having a headache, Magka flew onto his shoulder and pecked him on the cheek, cooing.
Maka, yes, I almost forgot. You should have seen it. I could have asked you.
Chapter 228, So You're an Owl Too. Even though Ivan could not speak the language, he was able to communicate with Marka without any trouble once he transformed into his animagus form. They would soon find out who had stolen the Horcrux from Mackle and retrieve it to destroy it. It had only been a few hours since the Horcrux disappeared, so Tom probably hadn't had time to do anything. With that in mind, Ivan ran out the door with Marka in his arms, looking for a place to transform and question her. Harry and Ron, who were left in the dormitory, looked at each other, unsure what Ivan was trying to do.
Cuckoo, so you're an owl too.
Before Ivan could ask a question, Marka cooed adorably and affectionately poked his cheek with her beak. Ivan's face darkened, and he nearly fell out of the air. He only temporarily transformed into an owl.
Stop it.
Ivan flapped his wings at her, then got down to business.
Maka, what happened in the dorm?
She didn't disappoint Ivan, speaking haltingly despite her inability to express herself accurately. Shortly after he left, a strange, ugly creature about the height of a table appeared in the dormitory. Then, when the strange creature came in, it rummaged around, looking for something, and made a mess of the dormitory. Naturally, this situation was intolerable to the Maka, so it released several of its kind from the cage to fight the strange creature. However, the comrades were not strong enough to drive off the intruder, who took something from Ivan's suitcase and disappeared.
A strange, hideous creature as tall as a table, it can suddenly vanish, Dobby.
Yvonne muttered to herself. The only one who fit the bill was Dobby. But why? How could Dobby be so bold as to steal a Horcrux? It must be noted that Dobby never once attempted to steal Ginny's Horcruxes, and as a house elf, he was unlikely to have foiled Malfoy Sr.'s plans. It was for this reason that Ivan had not thought of Dobby before. Yvonne was deep in thought when she felt a brush against her cheek. She turned to see Marka leaning towards her.
Wait.
Ivan asked, vaguely aware that something was wrong. He suddenly remembered that the Malka was a female owl. Ivan was so frightened that he quickly reverted to his normal form. Marka blinked adorably, not quite understanding why Ivan had suddenly changed back.
Harry, Ron's, thank you.
Ivan exclaimed, embarrassed that he had forgotten to help clean up after leaving. Harry and Ron shook their heads to show they didn't mind.
By the way, Ivan, have you figured out who's messing with our dorm?
Ron asked curiously.
It was a strange, ugly creature about the height of a table.
Said Ivan, nodding. Harry's face changed and he exclaimed.
It's Dobby. What? Which Dobby? The one who hit you with a bludger?
Ron didn't think of it at first, but he soon got it. After the Quidditch match, Harry told him that it was Dobby, Lucius Malfoy's house elf. If not for Dobby, he would not have received his mother's howler in public, where he was thoroughly humiliated that morning.
It's that bastard again.
Ron was furious and wanted to hang Dobby for it. Ron then asked curiously,
Did you really hear from your owl?
When he saw Ivan rushing out with the owl to find a place to talk, he wondered if Ivan had lost his mind.
You know, Match has always been smarter.
Ivan shrugged, not bothering to explain. Ron was tempted to comment that he was actually asking how Ivan communicated with an owl.
Anyway, I've thought of a way to lure Dobby out of hiding, and I might need your cooperation.
Ivan turned to Harry. Harry fell into a momentary daze as he recalled Dobby's words to him in the hospital wing, after Ivan had called him several times. Ivan had no choice but to repeat what he had said.
You have a way of catching Dobby. That's great.
Ron was equally excited.
Yes, it's just that you might have to sacrifice a little bit, Harry, and there's a bit of a risk in that plan.
Chapter 229, The Plan to Catch Dobby.
What? I'm being chased by a bludger on the Quidditch pitch in 2 days.
Harry exclaimed, devastated by Ivan's plan.
You call that a bit of risk? He nearly got his head smashed off by a bludger last time. I'll do the confounding charm this time.
Ivan said sheepishly.
I'll adjust it so it won't hurt you. But will it really work?
Harry was suspicious.
Of course, all we have to do is wait for word to spread that you were attacked again on the pitch, and I'm sure it won't be long before Dobby comes to you with an explanation.
Ivan explained. Yvonne knew exactly what Harry meant to Dobby. Harry's
Killing.
of you-know-who greatly improved the situation for the house elf, and Dobby was very grateful to Harry and considered him his savior.
Help.
Harry at Hogwarts. Therefore, Ivan was certain that Dobby would step in to clear the air once he learned that Harry Potter, whom he respected the most, had been attacked on the Quidditch pitch in the same manner as before, and suspected it of being the culprit. All he had to do was use the Polyjuice potion to take Harry's form and catch Dobby off guard. Ivan could think of no better way to lure the elusive house elf out of hiding. After hearing Ivan's entire plan, Harry expressed his doubts about Dobby's particular concern for him. After a moment's hesitation, Harry gritted his teeth and agreed, as he had some questions for Dobby.
Then it's settled, we'll swap identities with Polyjuice potion after the game.
Yvonne said, giving Harry an apologetic look. He could have used Polyjuice potion to identify himself to Harry so that Harry would not have to be chased by a bludger again. However, Ivan realized that Harry would not be able to learn how to pitch the ball and would be more suspicious if he gave himself away.
By the way, Ivan, why did Dobby go to so much trouble to find your notebook?
Harry asked after a moment's hesitation. Ivan shook his head and was about to say something to brush it off when Harry interrupted.
Because it's connected to Lord Voldemort, right? Voldemort, you know who?
Said Ron, startled. He looked at Ivan in surprise and took a few steps back. Ivan's face fell and he looked at Harry in confusion, not quite sure how he knew and was so certain.
It was Dobby who told me.
Harry explained. There were not many young wizards at Hogwarts who met this requirement. This, coupled with Dobby's inexplicable intrusion into the house in order to steal one of Ivan's belongings, led Harry to believe that the young wizard Dobby was referring to was indeed Ivan. Ivan frowned. He was surprised that Dobby knew about this and had told Harry, so he had to explain.
That's right, old Malfoy came to my family's wizarding shop during the summer holidays to sell a black diary. He told me that it helped me with my studies and helped me with my questions, so I always had it with me.
Ivan naturally blamed it on old Malfoy, stating that he was just an innocent second-year wizard.
God, how can you believe Malfoy's father? Look at how bad Malfoy is, they're both horrible.
Ron exclaimed. Harry nodded in agreement and asked,
Why don't we tell Professor Dumbledore about this?
When it came to Lord Voldemort, Harry was careful not to mention it to Dumbledore, as he could not be certain that Dobby was telling the truth.
We'd better wait until we catch Dobby.
Ivan shook his head. Ivan did not want to seek Dumbledore's help if he did not have to, especially as he did not want Dumbledore to know he had access to Voldemort's Horcruxes. Even if he could not hide it, it would be best to destroy the Horcrux and hand it over to Dumbledore, lest Dumbledore learn something against him from Tom. What's more, Ivan has been wondering about the conflict between Dumbledore and Alicia, and whether his father's death has anything to do with the old headmaster.
Ivan, I don't think your confusion charm will go wrong, will it?
Harry asked him discreetly in the Gryffindor changing room before the match. He was worried that he would be knocked off the field by the bludger and lose the game. Wood would most likely be heartbroken.
Don't worry, the bludger will fly slower this time. You'll be able to dodge it no matter what.
Ivan assured her. Putting the confounding charm on the bludger took some doing. After the attack on Harry Potter, Mrs. Hodge stepped up the security of the balls and checked them carefully in the early hours of the game, so Ivan managed to fool her.
All in all, Harry, just play your game. We're ahead by a lot of points. Losing the golden snitch won't stop us from winning.
Chapter 230, Gryffindor's Pitching Machine.
It's Gryffindor's 25th goal of the day. Ivan Hals has set a new record for the highest goal in a single match at Hogwarts.
Hogwarts Quidditch Arena. Jordan was giving a passionate commentary on a Quidditch match in the face of a rainstorm, the cold rain hitting his cheeks and soaking his clothes, but not dampening his enthusiasm. Ivan's style of play was so brutal that he used the Nimbus 2001's superior speed to its full potential, easily breaking through the Ravenclaw defenders and sending Quaffles into the hoop every 2 or 3 minutes. It was to the point where the Ravenclaw players, who were on the other side of the match, were beginning to despair as they watched Gryffindor's points soar. With a difference of over 200 points, even if their seeker caught the snitch now, it would be useless.
The bludger again, who the hell did this?
Madame Hooch's expression turned extremely ugly as she roared angrily. As everyone watched, the bludger once again went out of control and flew towards Harry. No one would call it an accident, as it would not be the first time it had happened. Harry was prepared for this and managed to dodge the attack in time, allowing him to breathe a sigh of relief. This meant that he could finally catch the golden snitch and end this game.
Go on, leave me alone, the game goes on.
In order to prevent Madame Hooch from stopping the game because he was being chased by the bludger, Harry shouted to her as he dodged the bludger in midair. The young Gryffindor wizards were genuinely worried for Harry, and Madame Hooch tried several times to shout at them to stop, but managed to hold back. Harry did not disappoint, dodging the bludgers as he searched for the snitch in the pouring rain. In the end, he managed to grab the golden snitch before Ravenclaw's seeker could. At this, the Gryffindor audience burst into cheers.
Brilliant, we won. Good for you, Potter, I knew you could do it. Strongest chaser, Ivan Hals, fearless Harry Potter.
The moment the match was over, Madame Hooch waved her wand and intercepted the bludger. Ivan watched from afar on his broomstick, feeling somewhat apologetic. Madame Hooch couldn't have found out anything, as he cleaned up after himself. Ding, a new legend has been born. In Ivan's mind, the system prompt sounded. Ivan was stunned for a moment, then happily checked it. He had previously speculated that the Quidditch team would receive a legendary point if they won, but that was just a guess, and he could not be certain. Ivan opened the status bar and found that his legendary points had increased to 5 points, and a new event had appeared in his legendary column. Legendary title, Gryffindor's Pitching Machine. Legend level. Legend, you broke Hogwarts' highest goal record several times during your second-year Quidditch match, making you the talk of the town. Note, despite your frequent use of experience cards to cheat during the course of a match, it is fortunate that no one else knows about this.
A pitching machine, what the hell kind of title is that?
Ivan had been delighted by the new legendary points, but when he saw the title, all he could think of was ridicule. Can't this stupid system use a better word?
You guys are the best.
Wood exclaimed as he ran over to each of them and threw his arms around them.
Harry, you should have stopped the game in time. What if you'd been knocked off like last time? Anyway, we're so many points ahead, we're bound to win.
Hermione scolded him. Harry did not reply, merely exchanging a smile with Ivan, as they were pressed for time and did not have time to inform Hermione of their plans to capture Dobby. The young Gryffindor wizards rushed down from the stage and surrounded the Gryffindor Quidditch players. Ivan and Harry were then thrown into the air. Harry, having braved the bludger's pursuit to continue the game, managed to steal the golden snitch, making the hearts of every watching cub race. It goes without saying that during the 3 Quidditch matches of the school year, the record-breaking number of goals scored in one match at Hogwarts was set by Ivan. Fred, who had made a fortune from Quidditch, was generous enough to give away dozens of bundles of bonfire for free, to be distributed to every Gryffindor wizard in celebration. It was not until dinner time, when everyone was able to calm down a little.
Let's do it. I've filled this kettle with Polyjuice potion. Just take a sip every 2 hours.
Ivan said, throwing a portable kettle at Harry.
Okay.
Without further ado, Harry opened the kettle and took a swig. It did not take long for Harry to feel his body go numb, as if it were stretching and twisting, rapidly changing shape. Ivan completed the transformation at the same time, but his vision was blurred when he saw.
Harry,
In the mirror,
you're missing a pair of spectacles.
Harry exclaimed, turning to remind her of the Polyjuice potion.
Right.
Ivan tapped his head and waved his wand to create a pair of spectacles identical to Harry's.
That's more normal.
Chapter 231, Capturing Dobby. When they arrived at the Great Gallery for dinner, they were once again welcomed by the young Gryffindor wizards. Yvonne deliberately spoke angrily about the 2 attacks on the bludgers, causing outrage among the crowd as they discussed who the bastard who had disturbed the Quidditch match was.
If you ask me, it must have been one of the Slytherins. They must have been upset about losing the last match and decided to get back at Harry again.
George speculated confidently, to the agreement of many of the lesser wizards. This was met with a sharp retort from the Slytherin wizards, which caused an uproar in the Great Hall, which only served to heighten the discussion. By the time Ivan had finished his dinner, the chatter had died down, but he had quietly left the Great Hall and was wandering in as remote a place as possible. He was well aware that Dobby, who broke the rules, did not want anyone else to see it, and would only come out when Harry was alone. However, after wandering around the castle for several hours, Dobby did not show up. Yvonne frowned. Did Dobby not know yet, or was he bewitched by Tom Riddle? Seeing that it was already late at night, Ivan sighed and prepared to return to the dormitory to wait for the news to spread tomorrow. Suddenly, a high-pitched voice sounded behind him.
Are you looking for Dobby, sir?
Yvonne's head snapped around as a small figure slowly emerged from a dark corner of the corridor. It had large bat-like ears, a bald, wrinkled head, and only a few dirty rags hanging from its body. Its green, tennis-sized eyes stared straight at him.
Yes, that's right. I was looking for you.
Ivan's right hand was on his wand, but he did not act rashly. A house elf could cast apparition in an instant, much faster than his stunning spell.
Did you hear what happened on the field?
Ivan asked.
Of course.
Dobby nodded enthusiastically, then seemed to think of something, his big green eyes going round.
You don't think Dobby was behind the bludgers today, do you, sir?
Dobby asked in alarm.
Don't you?
Ivan asked, feigning confusion.
What makes you think that, sir?
Dobby shook his head wildly, his bulging eyes glistening with tears.
Dobby,
At this point, Dobby stuck out his left foot, all 5 toes of which were filthy and swollen.
So I hope you'll understand that Dobby didn't do it.
Said Dobby, pulling back his foot and looking miserable with his big, watery eyes.
What about the people who sneak into the dorm and steal stuff?
Ivan ventured.
Dobby didn't mean to steal, sir.
Big tears rolled down Dobby's cheeks as he choked on his words. Kotobi couldn't keep these dangerous things around him, so he had to find a way to get them out and destroy them. Yvonne finally understood why Dobby had attacked her. He was worried about her sharing a room with Harry and wanted to steal her Horcruxes.
so did you destroy it?
Yvonne pressed.
Bad Dobby.
Dobby was already in a state of self-blame for the theft, banging his head against the wall and muttering to himself.
Stupefy.
Ivan had no choice but to use the stunning spell to prevent Dobby from disappearing again. Dobby, who was hitting the wall with his head, could not react in time and was struck by the spell. Dobby only had time to look back with a startled expression before he collapsed in a dead faint. Ivan shook his head and dragged the unconscious Dobby to the nearest classroom, where he used a transfiguration charm to tie Dobby up with a rope. After confirming that Dobby could not use magic, Ivan lifted the stunning spell. Dobby opened his eyes in a daze and immediately felt himself being tied up. To Ivan's surprise, Dobby didn't yell or shout. Instead, he just stared at Ivan silently with his bulging eyes. After a while, 2 streams of hot tears ran down his cheeks and his lips trembled as he spoke.
Dobby,
Dobby broke down and began to cry.
Shut up, I just wanted to ask you something.
Ivan said, interrupting Dobby's reverie. Suddenly, Ivan felt his body begin to change shape, and he knew in an instant that the Polyjuice potion had worn off. Ivan, however, did not bother to replenish the potion. Now that Dobby had been caught, there was no point in pretending otherwise. Right in front of Dobby, Ivan began to grow taller, his hair turning blonde, and he took off his glasses.
You're not Harry Potter.
Dobby immediately stopped whimpering and stared at the young wizard.
Of course not, my name is Ivan Howells.
Ivan asked.
Dobby remembered you. You must have wanted to hurt Mr. Potter with what you know who left behind, didn't you? Dobby would never let you get away with it.
Said Dobby with an expression of fierce determination on his face. Yvonne felt a headache coming on. Could they even talk properly? Ivan had to patiently explain that his goal was to destroy what Voldemort had left behind, as well as retelling the same line he had used to fool Harry.
I worked with Harry to destroy you-know-who's resurrection plan, and if you knew anything about Harry at school, you'd know it.
Ivan said, stating that he was a partner of justice and would never be bewitched. Noticing Dobby's hesitation, Ivan continued.
I bet you couldn't find a way to destroy that diary, could you? I can help you.
Chapter 232, The Missing Horcrux. Dobby's expression changed, and he looked at Ivan in surprise, wondering how Ivan knew the diary would be difficult to destroy. Ivan, of course, would not say that he had read it in a book in his previous life, but tried to explain it in a different way.
Because I've tried so many times, and it was only a few days ago that I actually found a way to destroy it.
Dobby's eyes widened in disbelief, but if Ivan hadn't considered destroying the diary, he wouldn't have known it was so difficult to destroy.
Tell me, where did you put that thing? We'd better destroy it as soon as possible.
Ivan asked anxiously. If Dobby didn't have the Horcrux with him, then he must have hidden it somewhere. There was a risk of losing it. Yvonne didn't want Tom to come out of hiding and start something while she was trying to fuse her second blood.
But
Dobby stammered, his ears drooping.
it's long gone.
Ivan said, aghast.
Why? I cut off its magic with isolation charms. It shouldn't have affected you.
Ivan didn't expect Dobby to be unable to read a diary, let alone a Horcrux.
Tell me what's going on.
Ivan demanded, looking at Dobby dangerously. Dobby shuddered and said with a slight tremble.
When Dobby got hold of that thing, he kept trying to sabotage it, and
2 days ago, late at night, by the roaring fireplace. A small, ugly house elf was holding a diary with a white cover, which she was slamming repeatedly on the table.
Bad.
Seeing that the diary was unharmed, Dobby angrily threw it to the ground and stomped on it. As a Horcrux, Tom Riddle was very frustrated. Although his magic power was restricted by the barrier, he was still able to sense what was happening outside. After being stolen by Dobby, Tom was overjoyed, believing that he had escaped the clutches of the young wizard and was now free. This was because he had seen the house elf at Malfoy Manor and knew who it was, and thought Dobby was there to rescue him. Tom Riddle then found out that the filthy house elf had not only failed to save him, but had been torturing him. Within a few hours, Tom had been subjected to knife cuts, flooding, and crashes. Even if the Horcrux was strong enough, how could Tom Riddle not be furious at being treated like this by a lowly house elf? However, Dobby did not care what he thought. He extended his index finger again, and a blinding light struck the Horcrux on the ground. The diary was knocked into the air, spun around, and returned to its original position. The diary lay untouched on the floor, but cracks had appeared on its cover. "That's enough, you damned house elf. How dare you do such a thing without your master's orders?" The diary that had fallen to the floor flipped quickly, black ink appearing on it. However, he was met with another blinding flash of white light, and the diary was once again knocked high into the air. When he landed on the ground again, Tom was shocked to find that the dirty house elf opposite him had stuck its left hand into the furnace and was screaming about punishing it for its mistake. Tom Riddle was speechless. How could he have met such a crazy house elf?
Bad Dobby has been punished.
Dobby muttered to himself as he trembled. He withdrew his burned left hand and returned his gaze to the diary. "What more do you want? Your little tricks will not destroy me." Tom Riddle was frightened for some reason. He could not predict what this crazy house elf would do to him. Dobby did not reply. He picked up the diary with his good right hand. Tom Riddle fought back, and a burst of black smoke came out of the diary and corroded Dobby's right hand.
Bad things.
Dobby screamed as he threw the diary into the burning fire. A red light burst from his index finger, and the flames of the fire rose. The black diary swirled in the flames, showing no signs of burning. Dobby's ears drooped with disappointment. At this moment, there was a faint sound of footsteps nearby. Dobby shuddered and reached for the notes in the stove, but the door was already opening.
Who was that? Strange, I heard someone talking. Where is he?
The visitor looked around. There was no one around except for the stove. As the intruder turned to leave, something flew out of the fire and crashed to the ground in front of them. The diary's white cover was charred and white smoke was coming out of it. The man glanced at it, intending to ignore it. The diary, however, flipped open of its own accord, and the black ink began to appear.
Dobby threw the diary in the furnace, and when he went back to look for it, it was gone.
Dobby said, blinking his eyes in frustration.
Didn't you see what the man looked like?
Ivan asked, feeling a headache coming on. He had finally caught the culprit behind the theft of the Horcrux, and now he had lost it. Ivan finally understood how frustrated Harry was in the original timeline, and how Dobby had come to cause trouble in the name of helping him.
No, sir.
Dobby shook his head. He had sneaked out this time, not wanting to be seen by anyone else, and had waited a long time to make sure the man was gone before returning.
Did you hear the man's voice? Where did the diary go missing?
Chapter 233, Handling the Basilisk. The next afternoon, at the long Gryffindor table, Harry asked Ivan, who seemed distracted.
Ivan, did you catch Dobby last night? Of course, but Dobby lost that thing.
Ivan said, nodding. Surprised, Harry put down his knife and fork and looked around. When no one was looking, he asked quietly.
So what do we do? Don't worry, I'll find that person as soon as I can.
Ivan reassured her. Harry was relieved to hear this. In fact, Ivan was having a headache over it. With so many people in the school and the Horcruxes being easy to hide, finding the person who obtained them would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. After dinner, Ivan refused Harry's offer to come along and went to the girls' bathroom alone. Marka, who had been keeping watch for a long time, flew over as soon as Ivan arrived.
Has anyone been in here before, Matcha?
Ivan asked, and she shook her head. Ivan breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed Tom would have a hard time charming someone, at least in a matter of days. As early as the day the Horcrux disappeared, Ivan had his owl keep an eye on the corridor outside the girls' bathroom and report back to him as soon as he saw or heard anyone enter. One could still rely on the disillusionment charm to hide, but there was only one way into the Chamber of Secrets. The entrance had to be opened in order to gain entry, and the commotion caused by the entrance could not have been hidden from a hearing owl. Therefore, as long as they kept a close eye on this place, they would eventually catch the person who had taken the Horcrux.
SSSS open.
Ivan hissed at the entrance mechanism, and with a jolt, the passageway slowly opened and they jumped in. Ivan was familiar with the Chamber of Secrets. Ivan, however, did not let his guard down. He was always on the lookout for any unforeseen circumstances and only relaxed when he confirmed with his psionics that the basilisk was still in its lair.
Speak to me, Slytherin the greatest of the Hogwarts Four.
Ivan says, opening the door to the basilisk lair. The basilisk quickly responded to Ivan's summons and slithered out of the statue's mouth, its serpentine head close to Ivan's face.
SSSS reading.
Ivan didn't expect the basilisk to remember this, so he said,
Take me to the research lab first. I have to look at the information again, then I'll take you to eat the acromantula.
The basilisk nodded and agreed, leaning down to lead Ivan into the nest as it had done the last time.
Can I take some of your blood if I need to study it?
Ivan asked suddenly. The basilisk did not speak. Instead, it opened its fanged mouth and roared at Ivan for a while, its glowing eyes filled with killing intent.
I hope those acromantulas are a little bit more powerful.
Ivan muttered to himself, then changed his expression and comforted the basilisk with his language, telling it to take him to the research lab first. He needed to get some useful information out first.
It's just as I thought.
She said wistfully.
There's always a pipe that leads straight in here, and the sewers smell a bit too bad.
HSSSSS tilde, I smell them.
The basilisk began to stir as it caught a whiff of the alluring aroma again, in large numbers.
It should be about time.
Chapter 234, The Basilisk in Madness. When he stepped into the cave, he was greeted by the sight of spider corpses of all sizes, most of them without any wounds. Apparently, the spiders died the moment they saw the basilisk's eyes.
Help me, wizard.
Aragog cried like a drowning man who has caught a duckweed. His voice was so full of life that he did not even think about why a wizard was there. Aragog was even more pleased when the wizard opposite him agreed.
Good.
Ivan, of course, had no intention of rescuing Aragog, but this was a rare opportunity. While the basilisk was tying up its prey, Ivan was trapped and unable to move. There is no better opportunity to strike than when you shed your skin.
Shadowless blade.
As soon as the basilisk opened its mouth, Ivan swung his wand, and an invisible blade of magic sliced through the air with a strange noise and entered the basilisk's mouth. A shrill roar echoed through the deep cave.
Fluorescence.
Chapter 235, You Know Too Much. Ivan breathed a sigh of relief when he saw the snake's massive body lying on the ground in front of him. It was a tough nut to crack. It would have been hard to say if he hadn't dealt the basilisk a nasty blow while it was occupied with Aragog. Ivan couldn't help but comment on the bookwriter's failure to note how long it would take for a rooster to kill a basilisk. It took him several minutes to kill the basilisk with 5 roosters, and he didn't even know if it had bled to death.
Thank you for saving me, wizard.
Aragog struggled to stand on his front legs, weakened by the snake venom. The acromantula was highly venomous and highly resistant to toxins, but Aragog had managed to hold out for so long that he was close to death. However, it did not want to die, so it begged humbly.
Do you have a cure for my snake venom?
No, I had no choice.
Ivan said brutally, shaking his head. His only known cure for snake venom was a phoenix's tear, but Dumbledore would not save a savage acromantula. Even if he did, it would be too late.
I am dying, wizard.
Ivan asked seriously, turning to look at the aged giant spider.
No, I want you to find the man who opened the Slytherin chamber and kill him.
Aragog's words were murderous. After the events of the Chamber of Secrets 50 years ago, Aragog was well aware that the basilisk remained dormant within the Chamber of Secrets and would never appear unless summoned by someone else.
You're the one who freed the basilisk.
Aragog screamed, his body shaking. As soon as he finished speaking, an invisible blade pierced Aragog's head. The old acromantula struggled to move forward, and then its huge body collapsed.
You know too much.
The dim cave was suddenly silent except for the bodies strewn across the floor. Ivan looked around, wondering what to do with them.
Wait a minute.
Ivan rubbed his chin in surprise. He felt like he was going to get rich overnight. If he remembered correctly, the venom of an acromantula was worth 60 galleons in the black market of Knockoff Alley. If sold officially, it would cost as much as 100 galleons. After cleaning out the nest, Ivan thought he would have no trouble making up 60 or 70 bottles. Combined with the gold galleons he had extorted from Lockhart, Ivan suddenly realized that 20,000 galleons was not as hard to earn as he had thought.
Explode.
There was a huge explosion, and the entrance to the cave was partially destroyed. Ivan fired another shot, burying the nest of the acromantula.
What can you do without the basilisk, Tom?
Ivan muttered to himself, looking at the blasted hole. Ivan's nerves had relaxed considerably since the battle with the basilisk, but this did not mean that he had calmed down. Because in addition to searching for a Horcrux, his improved fusion potion was about to be brewed, which meant he would soon be able to fuse a second bloodline.
A basilisk is the most dangerous and most powerful creature created by a wizard,
said Ivan, touching the end of the parchment and lost in thought. He remembered reading in The Origin of Blood that some ambitious wizards used various means to cultivate the most powerful and most suited magical creatures. Herpo the Foul, the creator of Basilisk, went there with this in mind.
System exchange for protection mode.
Chapter 236, Fusing the Basilisk Blood. As soon as Ivan spoke, a strange feeling came over him. Suddenly, Ivan found that the magic in his body had become unusually active, to the point of being controllable. It reminded Ivan of the first time he underwent a blood bond, when he was on the verge of a breakdown and entered a state of wonder that was very similar to what he was experiencing now. Ivan extended the index finger of his right hand, and in an instant the Obscurus was activated, sending an invisible blade of magic across the square table in front of him. Buzz tilde. There was a clear, piercing sound. The next moment, the square table and the cauldron on it were neatly cut in half and smashed to the ground.
Is this protection mode?
Ivan asked, impressed. He didn't need a spell or wand to control the magic in his body. This led Ivan to realize that the protective mode could be used not only to fuse multiple bloodlines, but also to increase one's strength and protect oneself in times of danger.
Oh no, only a minute.
Ivan immediately became nervous because the countdown had already passed 5 seconds. Seeing this, Ivan did not hesitate to drink the fusion potion in his right hand. The green liquid was extremely bitter, and Ivan forced himself to swallow it. But then Ivan felt a chill that penetrated deep into his soul, spreading from his stomach to his whole body, into his bones, into his blood, up into his brain.
All of you stop.
Ivan demanded, unwilling to let these two extraordinary powers drain each other. He decisively gathered the controllable magic in his body and suppressed the unicorn's power. After losing control, the fusion potion finally took effect and slowly fused into Ivan's body. Ivan could feel his magic power increasing rapidly.
The basilisk's eye.
Yvonne was suddenly very excited. Yvonne hurried to a mirror and examined herself.
Well,
Ivan found that his appearance had not changed much from before the fusion, except that his temperament had become colder, neutralizing the affinity the unicorn gave him, and his eyes were still black. Ivan considered this for a moment, then closed his eyes and tried to channel some of his magic into his pupils. Immediately after, he felt as if his eyes were soaked in ice water. When he opened them again, his black eyes had turned orange and vertical. Ivan's heart skipped a beat when he saw her eyes in the mirror. However, just as a basilisk would not commit suicide by looking at its reflection in water, Ivan did not feel any physical reaction from his body other than a slight discomfort in his eyes. At this moment, two crisp chicken cries suddenly sounded beside him.
This is too hard to control.
Chapter 237, Death to My Enemy.
How are my chickens?
Yvonne asked, suddenly thinking of the two roosters she had been looking at. When he turned around, he saw that there were only two lifelike chicken statues.
Curse, stop.
Ivan tried again, but failed to dispel the petrification. Ivan's expression changed. He recalled that when Colin, Hermione, and the others saw the basilisk's eyes through their cameras, mirrors, and puddles on the ground, they seemed to have entered an incurable petrified state.
So it's not just petrification, it's a straight death.
Ivan muttered. It was no wonder that even though he had petrified the two roosters, his magical eyes were still drawing out the magic in his body. It was probably because he had injected enough magic into them that they could kill the enemy with a single glare. However, it took so much magic to kill two chickens. Wouldn't it be even more difficult to stare a wizard to death? The snake's rampage just now made Ivan realize that his new ability might not be so easy to master.
Don't tell me you've gone cold, Tom.
Ivan muttered to himself. After dinner, Ivan carried the rats to the room of requirement as usual. When they reached a corridor on the 8th floor, Ivan's pupils contracted and a chill ran down his spine. At the end of the corridor ahead, a girl in Ravenclaw's uniform lay in a pool of blood, a clear mark on her left wrist. On the opposite wall was written in an unknown red liquid. The Chamber of Secrets has been opened, and those who oppose me shall die, Ivan Hars.
Damn it, Tom, you're trying to screw me over.
Yvonne felt her temper rising as she read his name, but this was obviously not the time to focus on that. Yvonne hurried over to the Ravenclaw girl and tested her. Seeing that she was still breathing, Ivan deduced that she must have fainted. He grabbed her wrist and held it against his wand.
Wound heals.
Ivan slowly recited the healing spell he had learned from Doggett, and the scar on the girl's left hand quickly healed. However, the girl's face was still frighteningly pale. After a moment's hesitation, Ivan decided to ignore her and quickly dealt with the writing on the wall. Ivan was well aware that while such a framing method was clumsy, it was sometimes particularly direct and effective.
Clear as a spring.
Ivan summoned a pile of clear water to wash away the blood-red writing on the wall, but it was not so easy to get rid of it.
Split into pieces.
In his panic, Ivan used the split curse to blow up his name, then used the disillusionment charm to hide himself again. At the other end of the corridor, two Ravenclaw students entered, puzzled by the noise. The next moment, high-pitched screams filled the floor.
ARGH.
Covering her ears, Ivan used his invisibility to slip past the Ravenclaw students and slowly made his way outside. However, he had no intention of leaving. Instead, he calmly hid in a corner where no one was looking and lifted the disillusionment charm. Then, he re-emerged and blended into the crowd, pretending to have just arrived. In just a short period of time, the corridor was filled with people. Everyone gathered around to watch this terrifying scene. There was even a little girl who fainted on the spot. Infuriated, Ivan examined the faces of everyone in the room, especially the young wizards who had arrived first.
Get out of the way, what are you all doing here?
Professor McGonagall's voice came from behind, and the young wizards in front of her parted to let her through. Professor McGonagall stepped forward and saw the Ravenclaw girl lying in a pool of blood.
What?
When Professor McGonagall saw this, her heart skipped a beat and she almost fainted. Professor McGonagall hurried over to the Ravenclaw girl and checked her breathing with a trembling hand.
Thank goodness she's alive.
Professor McGonagall exclaimed in relief. She had almost thought that the poor child had.
Oh my God, what's going on?
Madame Pomfrey was shocked to see the pool of blood on the floor and quickly replaced Professor McGonagall to check on the girl. Lockhart was the first to approach her to see how she was doing. However, she was pushed aside by Madame Pomfrey, who did not want anyone getting in her way. Dumbledore, on the other hand, was staring at the writing on the wall, paying particular attention to the damage.
Who was the first to arrive?
Dumbledore asked, looking around.
It's us.
Chapter 238. Is this what you mean by restoring?
So you're the ones who stopped her bleeding.
Madame Pomfrey asked appreciatively as she examined the Ravenclaw girl's left hand.
You did well, you saved her life. No, Professor, we didn't do anything.
The two boys shook their heads fearfully, indicating that they had been like this since they arrived.
Who could that be?
Madame Pomfrey asked curiously, standing up.
It can't be the same guy who attacked this girl, can it?
Lockhart joked, thinking he was being funny.
It's possible.
Professor McGonagall interrupted. The other professors nodded in agreement, believing that the attacker must have been a student who acted on impulse and then decided to save the girl's life. Dumbledore was silent for a moment, then looked at the two Ravenclaw boys and asked,
Did you notice anything unusual when you arrived? For example, did you hear a noise, or was there anyone else nearby?
The two Ravenclaw boys, remembering the noise they had heard earlier, reported truthfully to Dumbledore.
Is that so? It looks like someone is in a hurry to cover something up.
Professor McGonagall also noticed that there were signs of damage to the walls from a spell and raised her wand to cast a spell. Ivan's heart was in his mouth. He couldn't imagine what everyone would think when they saw his name on the restored handwriting. And how would he explain it? He refused to admit it and insisted that he had never been there. The writing on the walls and the signs of damage were all done by the people who framed him.
Let me do it. I'm afraid there's no one here better at this sort of repair than me.
Lockhart waved his wand before Professor McGonagall could. A scarlet magical beam slammed into the wall, followed by a loud explosion. A large hole appeared in the wall of the corridor, and dust began to fall.
That's the restoration you were talking about. There's nothing there now.
Snape said sarcastically, punctiliously. Everyone stared at the scene in shock. Several professors looked at Lockhart with strange expressions on their faces. Dumbledore took a step forward, pulled the Elder Wand from his sleeve, and waved it, causing the ashes and debris on the floor to stick back together. However, many of the rubble had already been stained with blood, and Ivan had used the freshwater curse to clean it, so the writing was completely illegible. Ivan was relieved. He had never been so glad.
Mr. Abel, Mr. Adrian, please come with me.
Dumbledore led the pair away, and the professors ordered the young wizards to return to their dormitories, while Madame Pomfrey took the unconscious Ravenclaw girl to the hospital wing. Ivan managed to get away, but he was not happy at all. If Tom Riddle had managed to pull off a similar attack once, there was a good chance it would happen a second or third time. Yvonne did not think she would be so lucky every time. The only solution was to find the owner of the diary before the next attack.
Hales, why don't you come and sit in my office for a while?
Lockhart asked as he caught up with him and patted him on the shoulder. Ivan looked at him for a moment, then nodded. Entering Lockhart's office again, Ivan looked around. There were books on the desk, all of them grimoires. The last time Ivan saw these books on Lockhart's desk, he thought they were 3 minutes old.
You can do magic normally now.
Ivan asked curiously. He remembered Lockhart going berserk when he did magic. Reading these books didn't seem to help much, did it? Lockhart shook his head and said,
No, but if you only practice one spell at a time, you might be able to use it as well as my memory charm.
Lockhart did not want to give up, so he asked again.
Hars, is there really nothing you can do to quickly improve your strength? I think I told you before, no.
Ivan shook his head.
What you're doing now is very good.
Ivan added,
Straighten up your knowledge of magic and spend all your time answering letters to your fans practicing magic. In a few years, you should be able to return to your normal spell-casting abilities. Spending years trying to become an ordinary wizard, not what I wanted.
Chapter 239, Life Force Drained. After agreeing to Lockhart's request, Ivan did not leave immediately, but instead asked Lockhart to teach him the memory charm. This term's experience taught Ivan the importance of this spell. If he had been capable of the memory charm, Hermione would not have found out about him sneaking into the Gryffindor girl's room. It also allowed him to deal with the day's events more easily, such as erasing the memories of the two Ravenclaw boys and cleaning up the writing on the wall before anyone else arrived.
You're going to learn the memory charm. Why? Are you going to erase someone's memory?
Lockhart asked curiously.
Just in case.
Without explanation, Ivan gave him a look.
Why are you asking so many questions? I'm not going to use it on you.
Lockhart smiled sheepishly and began explaining the incantation, gestures, and how to use the memory charm. Lockhart may have been mediocre in other areas of magic, but he was a true master of the memory charm, and there was probably no one in the wizarding world who could do it better than him. After all, Lockhart had devoted all his ingenuity to this charm for decades. It was a rare opportunity for him to show off his true skills, and Lockhart was very much into it. He even mentioned some of the tricks he had learned. Of course, this was partly because the young wizard in front of him had something on him. Under Lockhart's guidance, Ivan's knowledge of memory charms improved exponentially. After consuming a certain amount of GPA, Ivan could hear the sound of his proficiency rising in his head at regular intervals. Soon, Ivan saw the memory charm appear in the system's magic column.
It's all in the air.
Ivan swung his wand, and a milky spell of light hit the wall. As there was no target, Ivan was unsure how useful it would be.
You learned it, that was fast.
Lockhart was amazed. As a master of memory charms, he could see that Ivan had mastered the spell. It must be noted that memory charms were quite difficult to learn. When he first started learning the memory charm, he thought it would be very fast.
Something like that.
Said Ivan, nodding casually.
Your gift is truly astonishing.
Lockhart said, sounding both impressed and a little jealous.
There's no need to envy me.
Ivan said, shaking his head.
I'm afraid no one in the wizarding world has a better understanding of memory charms than you.
Naturally, or I wouldn't be so famous.
Lockhart said triumphantly. This was the only thing he was proud of, as not just anyone could use the memory charm to erase the memories of so many powerful wizards without giving themselves away. Ivan didn't bother to correct Lockhart's beliefs. Everyone had a way of living. After learning the memory charm, Ivan opened the door and prepared to leave. Suddenly, Ivan remembered something and turned to ask tentatively.
By the way, Professor Lockhart, what do you think about the attack today?
Lockhart was stunned for a moment before replying regretfully.
That was a very nice Ravenclaw. I even gave the girl an autograph before. Luckily, she's all right.
After exiting Lockhart's office, Yvonne followed the crowd back to the Gryffindor lounge. There was no shortage of speculation as to who had attacked the Ravenclaw girl. This went on until noon of the next day, when the Muggle-borns became alarmed when Hermione asked Professor Binns about the Chamber of Secrets. They believed that the one who opened the Chamber of Secrets must have thought that Muggle-born witches and wizards did not deserve to learn magic, and thus tried to kill the Ravenclaw girl. The words on the wall were a warning to everyone that anyone who tried to stop them from cleaning the school would be killed. The worst was Harry, who was listed as the prime suspect for the attack due to his exposure of Parseltongue. Because the Chamber of Secrets was rumored to have been created by Salazar Slytherin, the founder of Hogwarts was best known for his Parseltongue.
Goddammit, how could they suspect you? You were with us all day yesterday.
Ron exclaimed angrily in the corridor outside the classroom. Harry was also frustrated. He had done nothing, and yet somehow he was being accused of being the attacker.
Do you think it has something to do with Lord Voldemort's possession?
Harry asked, suddenly thinking of Ivan's stolen diary.
Perhaps.
Ivan said casually, then turned to Hermione and asked.
Hermione, is the injured Ravenclaw awake?
The most direct way to find out who had taken the Horcrux was to question the injured girl from yesterday, who would most likely know something.
Not yet. According to Madame Pomfrey, in addition to her injuries, she seems to have been hit with a powerful dark magic, and her life force is severely damaged.
Hermione said sadly. Ivan frowned as he realized that the situation was worse than he had thought. It seems that Tom Riddle is not only trying to frame him, but is also secretly trying to regain his powers. This discovery also gave Ivan a clue. Having spent so much time with Tom, Ivan knew a great deal about the power of Horcruxes. Unless the girl had 100% confidence in the Horcrux and was willing to open up part of her soul to it, Tom would never have been able to absorb so much life force from a minor wizard in such a short time. This meant that the Ravenclaw girl had most likely been in possession of a Horcrux for a very long time in order to establish such a level of trust. Now that the poor kid was no longer useful to him, Tom heartlessly abandoned him, throwing him away as a discarded pawn and giving him trouble.
Impressive, Tom. You're really getting good at this.
Chapter 240, Duel with Snape. At night, Ivan arrived at the Defense Against the Dark Arts office half an hour early and drank the Polyjuice potion, transforming into Lockhart.
The cloak, the gloves, the ring, and the wand.
Ivan frowned at his reflection in the mirror, then held out his hand to the side. Lockhart handed over his three-piece suit, but hesitated before handing over his wand.
Why do you want my wand? If I give it to you, what will happen to me?
If you don't want me to be seen through, bring them all.
Ivan warned Lockhart, who had disguised himself with Polyjuice potion.
And you'd better stay in your office and not go anywhere.
How can I do that? I don't want to miss such an important moment. Give me your wand. What if the other professors call me?
Lockhart raised his eyebrows. Ivan shook his head, unable to do anything about him, and tossed him a protective ring. As for his unicorn wand, Ivan had no intention of giving it to Lockhart. Luckily, Lockhart had a dragon's heart wand, which he had never returned after taking it from Alicia. It was just in time for Lockhart to use it, but even so, Ivan warned Lockhart not to go on stage and ruin his reputation. As they made their way to the dueling club, Ivan noticed that the decorations in the hall were very different from the last time. The flags of the four houses hung high in the air, and as the gentle breeze blew, the four elevated stages were placed in the center, ensuring that most of the students could get on for the night. Ivan was pretty sure it wasn't Lockhart's idea, because he would only set up a stage where everyone's eyes would be on him.
There are so many people here.
Ivan was surprised to see the hall bustling with activity. There seemed to be even more wizards here tonight than last time. He expected yesterday's attack to affect today's dueling club. As Ivan thought this, a disembodied voice spoke behind him.
Because everyone is worried, they want to know how to protect themselves.
Ivan turned to see a familiar figure in Ravenclaw robes.
Lou.
Ivan almost said, then remembered that Lockhart and Luna did not know each other that well.
You have a point, Miss Lovegood. Yes, that is why I hold the dueling club.
By the way, Miss Lovegood, what brings you here?
Ivan was curious as to why Luna wanted to see Lockhart, as she was not a fan. Luna's silver-gray eyes studied him for a moment without replying, then she suddenly pointed at his right wrist. Ivan looked down, confused, and then noticed the bracelet on his wrist.
So that's why.
Ivan sighed. He hadn't expected him to be so cautious, and yet his cover had been blown because of the circle of magic.
I saw that you had it with you the whole time, so I figured you wouldn't give it to anyone else, would you? And the real Professor Lockhart would go up on stage right away so that everyone could see him first.
Luna went on and on about how there was something wrong with Ivan, which was as interesting to her as solving a riddle.
I'm glad not every student is as smart as you are, or I'd just go back inside.
Ivan said reluctantly, but Luna made it clear where the disguise was missing. With that in mind, Ivan removed the ring of magic from his right hand and placed it on Luna's wrist.
You're wrong about one thing just now. I'll leave this in someone else's care if necessary. You can use its power in a duel, but in exchange, you have to cover for me when people ask.
Ivan said with a smile. There were many clever young wizards and witches at Hogwarts, and none of the professors were easy to deal with. The bracelet on his right hand was probably noticed by many. It could be said that Luna temporarily lent it to her.
I'm so glad to see so many people here today.
Ivan exclaimed, trying to get everyone's attention.
I'm sure you've all heard about the attack yesterday and are worried about it. You're eager to learn some magic that will protect you in today's class.
But what I want to tell you is that, in addition to practicing spell-casting skills to improve your own strength, it is more important to be vigilant at all times.
The cloak, the gloves, the ring, and the wand. Ivan frowned at his reflection in the mirror, then held out his hand to the side. Lockhart handed over his three-piece suit, but hesitated before handing over his wand. "Why do you want my wand? If I give it to you, what will happen to me?" "If you don't want me to be seen through, bring them all," Ivan warned Lockhart, who had disguised himself with Polyjuice potion. "And you'd better stay in your office and not go anywhere." "How can I do that? I don't want to miss such an important moment. Give me your wand. What if the other professors call me?" Lockhart raised his eyebrows. Ivan shook his head, unable to do anything about him, and tossed him a protective ring. As for his unicorn wand, Ivan had no intention of giving it to Lockhart. Luckily, Lockhart had a dragon's heart wand, which he had never returned after taking it from Alicia. It was just in time for Lockhart to use it, but even so, Ivan warned Lockhart not to go on stage and ruin his reputation. As they made their way to the dueling club, Ivan noticed that the decorations in the hall were very different from the last time. The flags of the four houses hung high in the air, and as the gentle breeze blew, the four elevated stages were placed in the center, ensuring that most of the students could get on for the night. Ivan was pretty sure it wasn't Lockhart's idea, because he would only set up a stage where everyone's eyes would be on him. "There are so many people here."
Well, it seems you're not very interested in what I have to say, so let's officially begin our lesson for the day.
Ivan said loudly, shrugging helplessly.
Now please welcome your potions professor, head of Slytherin House, Snape, to be my opponent. We will show you what a real wizard duel is.
Chapter 241, I hope you're as good as your biography. Snape, in his dark green robes, was already standing in the audience, dragging his long black cloak behind him as he hurried up. Ivan looked at the thin figure in front of him and felt a faint pressure. In contrast to Lockhart, who had dared to challenge him in the original timeline, Ivan knew exactly how strong Snape was. It can be said that Snape was one of the most powerful wizards in the wizarding world, after the likes of Dumbledore and Voldemort. Even Lord Voldemort, who possessed a chino during his school years, would be no match for Snape. However, this was also the reason why Ivan chose to challenge Snape. He desperately needed to know how strong he was after his second blood fusion, and the best way to do that was naturally to fight.
Professor Snape, are you ready?
Ivan asked.
I never have to prepare.
Snape spat out the words with a straight face, then added sarcastically.
I hope you're as good as your biography says you are. You'll find out soon enough.
Ivan said noncommittally. With that, Ivan bowed in accordance with the rules of the duel, and Snape gave a small nod in response to the stares of the young wizards.
3.
Ivan shouted, counting down. As he said the last number, his wand shook.
Expelliarmus.
A red hex flew towards Snape. Snape nonchalantly cast an armor charm on himself, and a barrier of magic rose up to ward off the disarming charm. However, before the shield charm's rebound could take effect, 2 more beams of light slammed into the barrier, shattering it. Snape stumbled back and nearly fell to the ground.
Very good.
Snape steadied himself, his expression turning ugly as he let go of his contempt and glanced at Ivan's gloves, ring, and cloak. He could tell that Lockhart had several powerful magical tools on him. Lockhart had used the advantage of the magical tools to cast 3 spells in a second, catching him off guard. Snape had no intention of pointing it out, even though he could tell that she was using an external force. After all, magical tools are part of a wizard's strength, not to mention the fact that continuous casting of spells with the help of magical tools generally requires a high level of magical skill.
You made a terrible mistake in not pursuing me when I made a mistake. That was your only chance to win.
Snape scowled and moved back to face Ivan.
That kind of victory is not what I had in mind,
said Ivan, shaking his head. He intended to use Snape as a whetstone to improve his skills, so he did not intend to win by trickery. Ivan even had the leisure to remind the watching wizards.
Did you all see that? That's the first thing I want you to remember. Underestimating the enemy is a taboo in battle.
Snape's face darkened. Many of the students burst out laughing at Ivan's use of Snape as a negative example, and George and Fred even took the lead in applauding. It was the first time they had ever seen Snape look so defeated.
You will regret this.
Snape said the incantation coldly, and with a flick of his wand, 3 huge black snakes shot out, their sharp fangs gleaming in the air. At that moment, a red light exploded in the air, and the 3 black and red snakes were torn into a dozen pieces. Their broken bodies transformed into countless white birds that shot back at Snape before they could even touch the ground. Snape's expression did not change as he raised his wand and swung it down. The hundreds of candles floating in the air above the Great Hall seemed to have been guided by something, and their weak flames began to swell and split, burning the flock of birds to ashes.
Spread out, move away.
The faces of the professors changed, and Flitwick could see that the 2 sides were serious. He quickly shouted at the students surrounding the platform to move away.
Explode.
Ivan chanted at the same time, and an orange fireball flew from the tip of his wand, expanded in the wind, and collided with the serpent. Even though Ivan was unable to use enhanced characters this time, the power of the thunderbolt explosion was still astonishing. The 2 collided, and a violent explosion filled the hall, sending sparks flying. When Professor Flitwick saw this, he held his wand and prepared to remove the shockwaves so as to not affect the young wizards watching. However, before he could do anything, the flames that were escaping were gathered on the dueling ground again. Ivan waved his wand, and the flames transformed into a fiery horse that soared into the sky and neighed. Snape pursed his lips and no longer held back. An invisible magical blade sliced through the air and instantly sliced through the horse. Without pausing, the invisible blade charged straight at Ivan.
Loreheart.
Chapter 242, I heard you can instackle me. Ivan and Snape's use of powerful charms and exquisite fighting skills was an eye-opener for the assembled wizards. A few of the more courageous Gryffindor students wanted nothing more than to get closer so that they could get a better look, but under Professor Flitwick's constant berating, they had no choice but to give up on the idea.
I didn't know magic could be used like this.
Hermione exclaimed as she watched Ivan and Snape reuse the aftermath of each other's magic more than once, infusing it with new magic before returning to attack the other.
Yeah, I didn't know Professor Lockhart was that good.
Ron's eyes were wide as he stared at the stage where Lockhart was fighting Snape.
But it looks like Snape is better and Lockhart is losing.
Harry added. The young wizards around him nodded in agreement, as did Professor Flitwick, who thought Lockhart was on the brink of defeat. Lockhart, who had used Polyjuice Potion to change into Ivan, scowled in displeasure. He felt that Ivan Hals had gone too easy on him during the battle and was letting him down for spending 3,000 galleons. Hearing the whispers of the young wizards, Lockhart said loudly and disdainfully,
You think too little of him. Snape would be dead by now.
Lockhart's high-pitched voice echoed through the hall and everyone turned to look at him strangely, even the 2 professors.
Ivan, how did you know that Professor Lockhart wasn't using his full strength?
Lockhart cleared his throat and was about to come up with an excuse when Hermione grabbed his right wrist and stared at him.
Wait, where's the bracelet you've been wearing?
How should I know? Lockhart panicked. Ivan had not given him that thing, so he had to make it up.
Well,
Who did you lend it to?
Hermione was even more suspicious. Lockhart avoided looking at Ivan in the dueling ring, but Ivan, who was fighting Snape, did not have a bracelet or anything of the sort. Lockhart's lack of response, coupled with Hermione's persistent questioning, made the 2 professors acutely aware that something was amiss. At any other time, it would not be a big deal for a young wizard to act strangely. However, things were different now. After the attack at the school yesterday and the fact that the killer had not been found, Lockhart's unusual behavior attracted their attention. Fortunately, a disembodied voice came from the crowd.
he lent me his bracelet.
Luna struggled to get out of the crowd, and when Hermione and the others turned to look at her, she waved the aura of magic in her right hand, causing the bone to rattle against each other. Hermione pursed her lips and fell silent. Flitwick and Professor Sprout noticed the change in Hermione's expression, and their eyes lingered on Luna for a moment longer before they finally dismissed their suspicions of Lockhart. During this time, the situation in the dueling arena changed again. Ivan, who had managed to hold his own against Snape for a while, was on the brink of collapse, as the young wizards in the audience speculated. As the attacker, Snape had no intention of holding back. He took advantage of Ivan's mistake in not reacting in time and cast several spells in quick succession, tearing through the layers of armor charms and the defensive cloak.
Expel Irmus.
The disarming charm hit its mark, and Ivan was forced to take a dozen steps back, almost falling off the platform. The runes on his protective cape dimmed, and he was unable to use it for some time. Most crucially, Ivan's wand fell out of his hand and into Snape's. Ivan frowned. He had a much more powerful wand in his sleeve, but it was obviously inconvenient to take it out. At this point, he is lost.
You gave me a chance before, and I'm giving you a chance now.
Snape said slowly, glancing at Lockhart before turning to Ivan.
I heard from Hars that you can kill me easily but without using your full strength. I'd like to see that.
Yvonne's mouth twitched. She had heard Lockhart's loud speech, but she had not expected Snape to take it seriously.
Professor Snape, are we trying to show the children a wizard's duel? It would be best if we restrained ourselves.
Ivan said tactfully, knowing that it would be beneath him to admit defeat.
Restraint? No, that won't be necessary. I think we'd all rather see something bloody.
Snape's face darkened, believing Ivan to be agreeing with Lockhart. Snape snapped his head around and addressed the crowd of young wizards.
Everyone get back 20 meters.
In case your Professor Lockhart's magic is so shocking that it reaches you.
Stand back and do as Professor Snape says.
Flitwick commanded loudly, ordering everyone to retreat to a safe distance from Lockhart's supermagic. Several mischievous young wizards, as well as Lockhart's die-hard fans, shouted,
Professor Lockhart, we support you. Professor Lockhart, you're the best.
Ivan, who was standing on the dueling stage, did not know how to get off the stage when he saw everyone looking at him expectantly. If he had his own modified unicorn wand, which could also be activated to cast an enhanced version of the Thunderbolt explosion, Snape would have been able to block it.
But I can't do that now. I can't expose my blood magic, can I?
Yvonne wanted to strangle Lockhart for speaking out of turn. Snape grew impatient and raised his wand to strike first. The doors of the exhibition hall were slammed open. The sudden noise ruined the mood, and everyone turned around to see Filch barging into the room, looking flustered and frightened.
Attacked, more children attacked, in the third-floor corridor.
Chapter 243, Looks like we misunderstood you. There was a brief silence as Professor Flitwick and Professor Sprout ran out of the room. There was naturally no need for the duel to continue, and Ivan turned to instruct Snape to restrain and protect the students in the hall before eagerly following suit. Snape resented Ivan's command of him, but he did his duty as a professor and ordered the students to stay put and not go anywhere. Ivan, on the other hand, got to the third floor as fast as he could. With the exception of Snape, all of the Hogwarts professors had arrived, and Madame Pomfrey was crouched on the floor examining the victims. Dumbledore, on the other hand, was standing to one side with a frown on his face. Ivan took a few steps closer to the injured girl, who appeared to be a Hufflepuff girl in her second or third year. She was extremely pale and her breathing was shallow. Unlike the last time, the girl was not injured or bleeding, and there was no writing on the walls. Ivan was not surprised. He had been at the dueling club tonight, and Tom might have known that there was no possibility of framing him.
Poor child, her life force is severely damaged, as was the case with the Ravenclaw girl.
Madame Pomfrey sighed sadly, but there was nothing she could do. Professor McGonagall was furious, her hand shaking as she held her wand, and she looked to Dumbledore for an answer.
It is not how that is important, but who did it.
Dumbledore growled instead of answering.
Perhaps we could find out which students didn't show up for my dueling class tonight. I doubt there will be many of them.
Ivan suggested. He suddenly realized that this was a good opportunity to catch Tom Riddle. The corridor on the third floor was not isolated, so the girl must have been killed very recently, at least since the dueling club started. This meant that the vast majority of people were cleared of suspicion. As for the remaining young wizards who did not attend class, they only needed to investigate them one by one, and they would immediately know who had the soul artifacts.
Very good advice, we'd better get moving.
Professor McGonagall soon figured this out and exclaimed.
Where's Severus, by the way?
Professor McGonagall asked when Snape did not return.
I told him to stay in the Great Hall and protect the children, so that the attackers would not attack them while we were gone, and it would be easier for us to count who was not present.
Ivan said confidently, thinking that Tom would not be able to escape this time.
Professor Lockhart, it seems that we misunderstood you earlier. I didn't expect you to be so reliable at a crucial time.
McGonagall was amazed at Ivan's careful arrangements. The other professors also looked at Lockhart strangely. They found it hard to believe that Lockhart had just said those words. Seeing the looks of confusion on the faces of the crowd, Yvonne realized that she had overacted, and that she did not fit in with Lockhart. However, because the opportunity to find the Horcrux was so rare, he was so excited that he forgot about his role. Ivan quickly coughed and tried to salvage the situation.
Ahem.
Yvonne managed to regain her composure, but the professors did not try to find out what had happened. Their minds were focused on capturing the attacker. Yvonne volunteered to catch the young witches and wizards who were not in class. He thought it best if he found the Horcrux before anyone else and made up a reason to destroy it before reporting it, lest Dumbledore learn something against him. Though unlikely, it must be guarded against. Unfortunately, Ivan's participation in the search was denied by Dumbledore.
No, I need you to inform Severus to protect the children in the hall with him, and to compile a list of all students who did not attend dueling.
Dumbledore said. Can't someone else be sent for such a trivial matter? Yvonne opens her mouth to retort, but then catches sight of Dumbledore's eyes staring at her from beneath his half-moon spectacles and shuts it.
Well, I'll go and tell Snape.
Ivan looked away, avoiding eye contact with Dumbledore, and left. Ivan had been running a clumsy, but when he got out of the corridor, there were no signs of brain intrusion. Even so, Ivan sensed that Dumbledore was suspicious of his identity, or he would not have rejected Ivan's offer to join the search.
Damn it, I should have kept the Marauder's map with me at all times.
Yvonne exclaimed on the way to the Great Hall. As he had to swap identities with Lockhart today, he kept all the items that did not match his status so that they would not fall out during the fight and be suspected. Yvonne had not expected Tom Riddle to be so bold as to choose this moment for a second attack.
What the hell happened? Did someone get attacked?
Ivan nodded and told them about the attack on a third-year Hufflepuff girl.
At any rate, we need to do a head count, and we believe that the attacker is among those who did not attend. I will take Gryffindor and Ravenclaw, and you will take Slytherin and Hufflepuff.
Chapter 244, We only need a small spell to solve the problem. Ivan shook his head, forgetting his earlier discomfort, and turned to the Gryffindor table.
Hales, come out with me. I have something to ask you. Also, the prefect is in charge of maintaining order while I'm gone.
Feeling that it was time for the Polyjuice potion, Ivan led Lockhart out of the Great Hall, unaware that Hermione was staring at them. The two of them returned to the classroom for their defense against the dark arts class and waited for the effects of the Polyjuice potion to wear off before switching back to their identities. Ivan carefully explained to Lockhart what he had done under the name,
Lorehart,
and instructed him not to reveal anything. Lockhart heard Ivan talking about the attack and asked curiously,
what happened to the Hufflepuff girl? Is she alive? Alive, it's just that Madame Pomfrey said the girl had a lot of life force sucked out of her, and I don't know if she'll ever wake up.
Ivan said with a sigh. Based on what had happened to Ginny in the past, it was likely that they would have to destroy the Horcrux to heal the two assailants. At the same time, Ivan found it strange that Tom was always looking for young girls. Was it simply because he was easier to fool, or did Tom Riddle discriminate against the boys at school and was unwilling to suck their life force? Lockhart was not interested in asking any more questions after learning that no one had died, and immediately complained about Ivan's performance in the dueling ground. He had spent 3,000 galleons expecting to see himself in the limelight and had almost lost to Snape.
That's beneath me.
Lockhart protested. Ivan rolled his eyes, ignoring Lockhart's lack of self-awareness, and warned him to keep his mouth shut when he got back to the Great Hall, lest he get himself into trouble. They turned a corner and stopped in unison. The little brown-haired witch in the corridor in front of them stared at them angrily.
Hermione.
Yvonne was surprised when Hermione, usually so well-behaved, sneaked out of the Great Hall and overheard their conversation.
Don't worry, it's what I do best.
Lockhart pulled his wand out of his sleeve, ready to use the memory charm on the problem. Ivan turned and glared at him. Lockhart had no choice but to put his wand away and step back. He said sheepishly,
Well, you guys have a nice chat. I just remembered that I have something to do.
Ignoring Lockhart's departure, Hermione scolded him angrily.
How could you help Lockhart, a liar, and join forces with him to cheat us?
The little witch was as angry as a lioness. After listening to Ivan and Lockhart's conversation, she soon understood why Lockhart's strength had been fluctuating for the past few months. It was because of Ivan.
Hermione.
Ivan interrupted, lowering his voice and speaking very seriously, in case anyone else was wandering around the castle.
It's because we're doing something important.
Before Hermione could release her anger, Ivan's words silenced her, and she stared at him in astonishment.
You should know about the attacks these days. I need to use Professor Lockhart's status to investigate suspicious students.
Ivan said, naturally ignoring the fact that he had earned a lot of galleons from Lockhart. Like this, Hermione couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong.
So what are we going to do? Have you and Lockhart figured out who the attacker was?
Hermione asked worriedly, her attention instantly captured. Seeing that Hermione had dropped the subject of his polyjuice potion transfiguration, Ivan quietly breathed a sigh of relief.
Something like that. The attacker was probably one of the two girls who didn't show up.
Yvonne ran through the list of suspects in her head. The vast majority of the students, plus Snape and Lockhart, were in the Great Hall, so there was no chance of an outside attack. The other staff members at the school were strong and knowledgeable, and Tom was unlikely to charm them.
So how did Luna get your bracelet tonight?
Ivan made no attempt to hide the fact that Luna had recognized him when he entered the dueling ground.
So I let Luna have the bracelet for a while, to shut her up and to cover for me.
What about me? Now I know as much as she does.
Hermione asked suddenly, her brown eyes fixed on Ivan.
How about?
Said Ivan, scratching his head, vaguely remembering that Hermione was a fan of Lockhart's.
I don't want to. Don't ever mention that liar to me again.
Hermione seethed, remembering how she had stuck Lockhart's mugshot in her room. They sneaked back into the Great Hall, where Ivan, having lost his status as a professor, stayed at the Gryffindor table, waiting for something to happen. It was not until late at night that Dumbledore arrived and spoke to Snape in a low voice.
I think you need to rest here for the night.
Dumbledore waved his wand, and the long tables flew up and automatically piled up in the corner, leaving hundreds of purple sleeping bags behind.
Rest well, everyone. Also, I hope that the prefects will guard the entrance, and the head boy and head girl will be in charge of maintaining order. If you find anything wrong, you can immediately send a ghost to report to me.
Chapter 245, The Dark Lord's Wish.
Weasley, I think you need to learn when to keep your mouth shut.
Snape waved his wand and a grayish-white light hit Ron. Ron was horrified to find himself unable to speak, and Snape left with a satisfied nod. Yvonne took a moment to mourn Ron's fate while trying to guess how things were going. Dumbledore's refusal to allow them to return to their dormitories is proof that the two girls who did not show up for class have not yet been found, or that
That man is a complete liar.
Hermione muttered under her breath, glaring at Ivan in annoyance.
It must have been you who told Lockhart about the lessons in magic, mustn't it?
It's not that. Lockhart probably read it in a book somewhere.
Ivan shook his head, frowning as if he had been missing something.
Lorehart.
Chapter 246. No one wants to be a liar all the time if they can.
SSSS tilde open.
Ivan rushed to the abandoned girls' bathroom and reopened the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets. It took a long time for Ivan to fall through the dark, slippery pipes, and he didn't even have time to get rid of the clinging dust and grime on his clothes before he was able to make his way back into the chamber. The sound of rushing water slowly reached their ears. A huge serpentine statue stood on one side, and streams of water were gushing out of its mouth and into the pools on either side. In the middle of the pool was a long passageway, and at the end of it, on a platform, a figure in dark purple robes and a golden-red cloak stood with his back to the statue of Slytherin.
Hars, what are you doing here? Lor Hatter.
Ivan angrily waved his wand. Sutilde. A blinding red light crashed into Lockhart, only to be repelled by the protective cape. It crashed into a nearby serpentine statue, creating a huge crater in its massive head. Gravel and dust fell from the sky.
There's no need to pretend anymore. Give me the Horcrux.
Ivan didn't seem too concerned about the situation as he approached. After a few days of experiments at school, Ivan had figured out how to use the eye of the Bloodline magical basilisk, and a protective cloak would not be much of an obstacle.
A Horcrux, what's that? What are you talking about?
Lockhart tried to defend himself, but when he saw Ivan raise his wand again, he quickly corrected himself.
If you're talking about a black diary, I don't have it anymore. You gave it to your admirers.
Ivan asked sarcastically, unsurprised.
They trusted you so much, and you used them as a tool to feed Tom Riddle. How cruel of you.
The moment Ivan saw the mission complete, he figured out everything he hadn't understood. It was Lockhart who picked up Dobby's Horcrux after he lost it, and he was the only one who was able to gain the trust of so many young witches of different houses and grades.
You can't blame me for that.
Lockhart said innocently, throwing up his hands.
They volunteered for me.
So did Tom cure you.
Yvonne was amused by Lockhart's reaction. She had never known him to be so stupid. He thought Lockhart would have learned something from fooling so many powerful wizards and writing so many legendary stories. He did not expect to believe the claims of an evil diary so easily. However, to Ivan's surprise, Lockhart nodded and spoke proudly.
Of course, he cured me, or I wouldn't be working with him. Dismember.
Lockhart waved his wand in a brilliant display of power, sending a magical beam of light crashing into a nearby stone pillar, creating a small crater in it.
Did you see that? I just managed to cast a spell. Of course, I know there's still a long way to go before you're a master of magic, but I'm sure it will be different soon.
Not only that, I can even speak snake now.
Lockhart's face was red with excitement as he tried to show Ivan how he had changed. For Lockhart, who liked to show off, the sudden increase in his strength and the fact that he did not dare to tell anyone about it nearly suffocated him.
Do you really understand who you're dealing with? It's the Dark Lord. Do you think he'd be so kind?
Ivan's heart went cold at Lockhart's words. In his opinion, Lockhart had been so deeply affected by the Horcrux that it was possible that his soul had been corrupted by Tom Riddle, and that was why he could speak the language. With that in mind, Ivan edged closer to Lockhart. The closer the basilisk eyes, the better. He needed to preserve the 6-hour enchantment and enough magic to deal with Tom Riddle, and did not want to waste too much energy on Lockhart.
But I didn't have a choice.
Lockhart exclaimed, looking disappointed.
Hales, I have twice begged you to help me, to tell me the secret to growing strong quickly, and I would have paid more galleons for it, but you refused, did you not?
I told you I don't have any of those.
Yvonne replies, frowning.
Don't try to fool me. I saw everything you and he wrote in that diary. There's a way, isn't there, in this Slytherin chamber?
Lockhart interrupted Ivan, his eyes turning red and his body shaking with emotion. He gazed at Ivan with a look of envy and even jealousy as he murmured.
You know what, Hals? I've always envied you. You have almost everything I want. Whether it is strength or prestige, you're special wherever you go, mastering a profound spell in a few hours.
Lockhart was hysterical.
Your memory charm is better than anyone else's. Isn't that your gift? You've just been using it in the wrong place.
Ivan felt a chill as he committed Lockhart's deranged appearance to memory.
What good would that do?
Lockhart sneered. No matter how good the memory charm is, you'll only end up as the most ordinary employee in the ministry's Department of Affairs, working every day to cast spells on silly muggles to make them forget things they shouldn't remember.
I need flowers and applause, and more than that, I need everyone's attention and admiration. This is the life I'm meant to lead.
Lockhart's intoxicated expression turned ferocious.
Hales, nobody wants to be a liar forever if they can help it.